man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome to a Muppet stream. We're kind of ready to go. There's nothing on the board today. I know, it's terrible. But we've got our Sam Pell, right? We've got our Muppet mug. We're ready to go. Have you considered? I know Aaron out there got a nice mug for himself. It looks awesome, Aaron. Thank you. Available at the store. And yeah, we get some Table Rock tea, wintergreen. Awesome. It's still steeping. It's hot off the presses there. So yeah, we're doing a Muppet stream. And if you're like new to the streams or whatever, this is more sort of rambly. It's kind of a roll up of stuff I've seen over the week, the month, whatever patterns I've been noticing, things I've been thinking about, new words, new ways, new things, new navigation in the world. And yeah, so one of the guys I know from my entrepreneurship meetings is saying, "Oh yeah, I showing off your stream, and you're like a modern day Aristotle." I was like, "Wow, that's whoa, heavy burden." Really appreciate it though. That's pretty impressive if it's remotely accurate. Yeah, I would like to think we're at the steps of the Agora or something, or headed to the Grove to all chat up some deep philosophical point using wisdom and not actual Greek philosophy, which is actually science. Modern science is just ancient Greek philosophy. Who knew? Apparently no people who've read ancient Greek philosophy, which is weird. But anyway, it's the world we're in. So to kind of start us off, I think I'll go in with an observation that I kind of had today. It might be garbage, right? These are kind of new thoughts. They're nothing I've let marinate for any amount of time, right? And I'm just gonna like share them now. They're not vetted. There's really not a lot of group help, right? They're sort of missing that careful distributed cognition that most of my streams have. But this is a Muppet stream. That's what this is for. So the observation is that, the truth is that which comes forth despite your efforts to the contrary, right? And people often reveal the truth and their beliefs, right, in spite of themselves, in spite of their personal agenda or their egoic agenda. And it's just something to think about, right? I'm not sure if it's right, how right it is. It's just sort of something that popped into my head. And astute listeners will probably realize that this is sort of related to my short form definition of reality, which is that which objects to your subjective experience. It's a similar formulation, right? I'm using, an embarrassingly small number of patterns to do everything. And I almost feel guilty. The rest of you are struggling, and I'm like, oh, that's pattern number 3. Like, Why are you struggling with pattern number 3? Yeah. Anyway, and like along those lines, we have a problem sort of seeing the truth, right? And often the truth is simple, and that's why, or one of the reasons why I believe we have a problem seeing it. So let me explain. Why is it that we don't like simple answers? Because we don't, like, we seem to have a real problem with simple answers, and it's worth kind of asking the question, like, what's with that? Like, why simple answers are so difficult for us? And I think the reason is simple, oddly enough. Simple answers mean we missed something. Or worse yet, we saw that answer and we ignored it. We ignored it. And also, the way we arrived at that answer is a problem. So if we got that complicated answer, or we looked into the issue, we consulted some experts, we did some reading or whatever, the people we relied on to tell us something about the thing that is simple lied to us, or aren't experts, or whatever. And like that sucks. Like, wait, we relied on the wrong experts? What happened? Like, the experts are dumb? They're not experts? I thought they were experts, right? I thought this research was good. It can't be that easy. All these smart people are talking about it and they missed it? Really? But yeah, really. That's very often the case, unfortunately for them, and probably for you too, and certainly for me. I hate it when I miss simple stuff. Happens all the time, though. It's just Muppets. We're all Muppets. And maybe that you associate that in the age of gnosis, in the age of knowledge, with sin, right? Like, you didn't have the knowledge. You listened to the wrong knowledgeable person, or you looked at the wrong knowledge to come to your conclusion, and the answer was knowable by you, but you kind of skipped over thinking about it. And I think this is huge. Like, I think this is a big deal. It's impacting us all the time. And it's impacting everyone else too. Like, they're just ignoring the easy answer because it can't be easy. Like, we live in this rational world, and but I think we should consider this, that because I do think it's a big deal. Like, a lot of people just don't prefer the easy answer. They miss the simple answer. They miss the obvious, the sort of the elephant in the room. And what elephants are we ignoring, or worse yet, denying? Right? And to save our own egos, or the authority or position of the experts, our beloved experts, to save our own correctness, our image, our knowledge, and that's primary to us now. What are we ignoring? What are we preserving? But when we have this aversion to the simple answer, to the easy sort of way of understanding something, or interacting with something, it makes it hard to take the easy win. Right? Like, a lot of people are, I did that and it was easy, so I don't want to take credit because it was easy. But I think that's backwards. Like, when you're right, you're right. Like, it's not a bad thing. But first, we must see the world how it is. Right? Now, What about protecting our ego? Because our ego sees the world how it wants to see the world. That's kind of the definition of ego, by the way. I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of, well, according to the blah, blah, blah definition. No. The ego is the thing that sees things how, that it, in a way that is advantageous to itself, by definition. That's pretty much how Freud and everybody since has parsed it, right? It's a really handy way to think about things too. And we prefer these complicated answers so we can seem smart, right? So that the world seems smart, so that rationality rules the world. And if you think you master the world through rationality, that's age of gnosis. If you think you master the world through rationality, then that's what you want to happen, because it makes you smart and it puts you in a position of control or possible control. And you can see, right, why you'd want the world to be rational, because we're told we're rational creatures, which is mostly a lie, by the way, but whatever. We're creatures capable of rationality at great cost, great cognitive cost. And we're not all equally capable of rationality. So there goes your equality doctrine right there, just in case you're still holding on to that garbage. And if rationality doesn't rule the world, what does? Well, look, technically, if it's not rationality ruling the world, it's magic. It's something in the ethereal, something we can't see, touch, understand, measure, right? It's a quality. It's the quality of the world, or the qualities of the world. And, we'll try to science them by saying qualia. Stop listening when people use that term. It'll be better for you. Renaming qualities so that you can science it is a bad plan. Like, no. I'm a no on qualia. And it leads us down the rabbit hole. I mean, is the world just suffering from like a lack of authority? Is that what it is? Like we don't have authorities, we don't have good authorities, we don't have authorities we can trust, or we don't believe in authority anymore, we're rebelling against it, right? Or is it an unwillingness, a lack of need to defer? We need not submit because we're rational creatures and we can know the world because the world is rational. And rationality is just one step to control, because rationality allows us perfect prediction, which is perfect certainty, which gives us perfect comfort. Age of gnosis. It's an illusion. It's not the way the world is. It's not even close. It's the way the compressed world is. You compress history down, you can kind of compress it down and say, oh yeah, the reason why the rebellious colonies won the Revolutionary War is because they had different military tactics. That was one factor. But it's not the reason, because there isn't one reason. The age of gnosis compresses everything down. You say, oh, the reason why they won was because, it was just one small battle in a much larger war between England and France. And that is true also. Two true statements about the Revolutionary War. Neither is the reason. They're both contributing factors. They're both influences in the outcome. But they are not wholly responsible for the outcome. How responsible they are for the outcome, we could have tons of debates about. But we're not here to do that today. And then another thing I wanted to kind of touch on was, and don't be thinking just because these are different topics and this is a Muppet stream that this isn't related. Hopefully you can find the relation, and if you can't, that's okay. Like no bad on you, but you can look for these threads. So we have this concept that Sally Joe speaks so eloquently about, which is the piety of poverty. And we can complain and say, well, that's mostly a Baptist thing or something, and that may be partially the case. But you see that thread where people are sort of pretending the poor need to be lifted up because they are poor, but also they must be pious because greed is obviously not pious. And so we get into this cycle, unvirtuous cycle, right? Where we are engaging in the world in a way that the poor people need something. They need more, and that will make them better. The reason why they're bad or having a problem is because they're poor, which is backwards, by the way, just in case you're keeping score. But it also causes this lack of piety as you move up the money chain. And so these billionaires, I mean, they can't be good people. It doesn't matter how much they give to charity or what they do in the world or whether or not they're enacting the electric car utopia. We have to drag them down. And the problem with the piety of poverty is there's no virtues and values there. It's all materialism. It's all reductionism. And it's a very American thing, I would say. Very American indeed. It's just interesting, right? Because it does definitely connect to my next point, which is the flat world. I mean, it's becoming evident everywhere. People are starting to use the language, starting to use a lot of language, listening to some Peugeot and Richard Rowland on the Universal History on Christmas, which is interesting. It's less of a universal history story, which was disappointing, but that's okay. Richard Rowland is entertaining, and so is Jonathan Peugeot, and you can just hear the language flowing out. They're using a lot of the same terms that we'll say we've been using the Peterson sphere for quite some time. And you see, John Vervaeke and thumbnails and things like that. And to some extent, it's ironic, right? The world is converging on some of this very similar language, probably with good and important reason. But the world is flattening. And the reason why the flat world is so prevalent today, the reason why people are flattening the world in various different ways, is because it's easier, right? It's easier to think about the world. And at the same time, action is hard. Doing things in the world is hard. And a side effect of doing things in the world is hard is that when you do things, even if you do them perfectly, although you probably almost never do, people will feel judged because there was an action in the world done by you, and how dare you. Peterson talks about this, right? I mean, we're in the Peterson sphere. He talks about all of these ideas pretty much. He uses different language and different concepts and often better metaphors, better stories. You clean your room and you see what happens. Yeah. You make a success of yourself and you see what happens. Your piety goes away, maybe. But the flat world is easier because it creates nice binaries, right? In a flat world, everybody is to the left or right of you. And you can sort of posit yourself in the middle. That's handy. I'm a libertarian. That's an identification against. You're not anything if you're a libertarian. And this binary thinking is largely due to cognitive overload. I think that binary thinking is a sign of cognitive overload, at least in the thing you're thinking about. Right? It's like we've either reached the end of our consideration power on something, like, right, or we just haven't thought about it yet. And so at some point we kind of, we'll do that later, reduced it to a binary, picked a side, we're done. makes the world easy, right? But it does indicate we've reached the end of our thinking. And, the binary stuff, it gives you a nice, super simple model for the world. And we need that when we need to make an easy decision, a quick decision, when we need to be decisive. We need a decision that we don't need much thought about. We just reduce it to a binary and make a decision. And binary away, right? But did you think about it? Did you consider it now that you have it down to a binary? Better yet, can you? Can you? Or are you just telling yourself you can, and in fact you can't? And segues nicely. Is flat versus complex a binary? Glad you asked, actually. When you enter into a binary, you have to understand that you, and for most, maybe all values of you, are quite capable of putting anything in a binary frame. That's not hard. This is a non-accomplishment. Right? Boiling things down to A and B is really easy for us to do, and I'm not saying you should never do it or anything like that. Okay. Flat is flat. Complex has qualities that flat does not have, and therefore it's not a binary because they're not opposite and they don't oppose one another. The flatness exists within the complexity. Binaries and flatness are reductions by definition. And it's always important to know where your definition, where your starting point, your axioms are. And so, sure, you can put anything in a binary. And sometimes you have to, because you have to make a decisive decision. You need to make a quick decision. You need an easy decision because you've just made a bunch of hard decisions, right? And so it might be that you come down to, it's late, I'm tired, we need to eat, there's no energy in the house, cooking stuff takes time, we're out of time, we need to make a decision. Are we going to order out? Are we going to go to a restaurant? Because we've already ruled out due to being tired, so we were never in a binary, right? We've already ruled out making dinner ourselves. It's too much. And it's like, well, maybe we're too tired to get in the car. Okay, we're going to have somebody bring us a pizza. Fantastic. We've resolved the binary. Oh, what kind of pizza? Now, when you look back on that decision, you're like, oh yeah, we just kind of decided to get a pizza and of course pepperoni, because if you don't like pepperoni pizza, you're not a human. So we get a pepperoni pizza. Fair. When you look back on your decisions, they all seem binary, all of them, every single one, because you did the hard work of filtering out all of the things until you got to the top two, and then you made a decision between priorities. That isn't what happened, right? Like, what happened is not you made a decision between two things. What happened is you filtered out all the other things first. And, we don't know that. And that's the problem, is that I have a video on this, 1, 2, and 3, right? There's a big difference, right? 3 and the relationships between 1 and 2. There's way more relationships with 3 than 1 and 2. It's not linear. It's not a linear progression, right? And likewise, a lot of things aren't binaries because the alternative is not of the same quality. It has more qualities, right? It's richer, it's deeper, it's larger. It is in some ways encompassing. Flatness tends to exclude. That's what it does. It separates everything into binaries or ontologies, which I'm also not a fan of. They have their place. but can't reduce everything down into an ontology. And so that, this binary stuff, this flattening of the world it's hard on us. And to be fair, you cannot avoid reduction because you're always overloaded. I mean, first there's the flood of information, the age of gnosis, right? We've got this age of gnosis problem. There's just too much information. There's a flood of information. We're basically lost in seas of information. We mistake this for knowledge. Different problem, but related. Age of gnosis causes many little problems that don't need to exist, by the way. And we have to reduce. Like, we're just Muppets. We don't have a choice. And that's why we need to submit to distributed cognition in some form. Distributed cognition through time is preferable because it's survived. But there's a problem with submitting to distributed cognition, right? Of course, this creates a bunch of conflict and tension because, as it turns out, newsflash, nothing is perfect. And submitting to imperfect things has a cost. Also, not submitting to imperfect things has a cost. Which cost do you want? You can take the world on your shoulders and try to do it all yourself. You're not going to succeed anyway, but you can do that. Lots of people do that. They burn out. Might take a while. Some people have a lot of fortitude, a lot of staying power, right? Some people don't. They don't have a lot of stamina. But at the end of the day, submission is often just your lowest possible cost. And it's not optional. You're submitting to something. You're either submitting to the tyranny of your own self or the tyranny of a distributed cognition somewhere that's every once in a while going to get it wrong, and you're going to pay a price for that. But when you get it wrong, you pay a bigger price. So it maybe submitting to an imperfect distributed cognition is just your lowest possible cost. And that sucks. And I mean, maybe that's why concepts like original sin are handy or something. I don't know. Meh. But the removal of tension, of conflict, is no good. Because at the end of the day, you can't actually build anything, right, without conflict. You can't build things up without conflict, including yourself, right? You need stress, you need tension, right? Without these things, you weaken. And we know this. We know this through our experience. We don't need somebody to propositionally tell us this, like some Muppet on some stupid stream somewhere. We know this. If you don't use it, you lose it. It falls into disuse and disrepair and dis-ease. We don't feel good when we're comforted too much for too long. And then we create fake problems to make up for the real problems that somebody else has taken on for us. Coddling of the American mind, coddling of the American soul. Coddling of the European soul. Affluence breeds weakness. It doesn't have to be that way, but boy. And look, being the same as you were yesterday or the last hour, that removal of cyclicality, of change over time, removes our ease. We actually become uneasy. In the short term, it works. Vacations, big fan. Go to Hawaii, it's awesome. Go to Croatia, also awesome. I go to Edinburgh, Scotland. Beautiful place, awesome. But don't stay there. Certainly not in Hawaii. Oh my goodness, Hawaii is like an energy suction trap. Just island time just infests your brain, and you're like, Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Which is nice to do every once in a while, especially if you're anxious and you run around a lot. You're not trying to keep busy. You need that cyclicality that you have to come away from your vacation and back into what you're doing or what you were doing. You have to get back into the swing of things. You have to start working again. You have to start building again. You have to start that cycle of conflict and tension and release, stress and de-stress, stress and relaxation, stress and entertainment. You have to do that. It's not a binary. It's not stress, no stress. Stress entertainment, stress relaxation, those are different things. Stress of this type versus stress of that type even. And that flowing cyclicality, that seasonality, that's important. That's how we grow. That's how we build things. And ironically, another thought that I have is that thoughts are flat. They have no depth, no width, no height. And therefore, there's no hierarchy inherent in thoughts. We give thoughts the hierarchy if we're wise enough to do so. And Jordan Peterson's right, like hierarchy is inevitable. It's older than trees. So there's that. So thoughts are going to have hierarchy like many other things do. And they're flat. So no wonder why we tend to create flat models of the world in our head when we're allowed to do so. We're not given a lot of interaction with the real world when we don't play enough. We don't experiment enough in participation with the things outside of ourselves. Right? Action has to be outside of you. Things inside of you are not actions. You cannot validate and verify them using other people. It might seem like you can. Oh, did you see that pink unicorn? Yeah, I did too. Oh, okay, it must be real. No. I took my pink unicorn for a walk. Oh, I thought we had the same pink unicorn. I took my pink unicorn for a walk. There goes that problem. So we're assigning a hierarchy to our thoughts, and our thoughts are flat, and therefore the models we create with our thoughts are flat. And yeah, there's ways to create thought models that are not flat, but the thoughts, the things they're constructed from, are flat. Very easy to fall down that rabbit hole. Very easy. That's that line between illusion, right, and reality. I have a previous live stream on that. Illusion, fantasy is required. It's part of your imaginal realm. It's part of your imagination. But it's too easy to build a model with those things. And then the problem becomes you have a flat model. You have perfect prediction, perfect certainty, perfect accuracy in your model, but it doesn't match the things outside your head because it's only perfect in your head. All the thoughts you have are perfect in your head, by the way. It's a fantastic place. You should come visit someday. And the lack of hierarchy is important because the fundamental problem that we're having nowadays is a lack of communion, of commonality, of common ground, common ways of thinking. Memes are destroying the world. I've talked about memes before. I have a video on that somewhere. When we don't look up, we aren't looking through the only lens that actually matters. Sure, things get easier, or at least they seem to. But really, we're trading off one lens for another. But all the frames that you can have, political, economic, they make more sense when you look up. When you aim higher at the true, the beautiful, and the good. And you can use that lens as your primary lens. And then you can look at politics and realize it's downstream from culture. Well, politics is downstream from culture. What's going on? Why do people think that politics is moving things? Because it's clearly not. It helps to have a sense of hierarchy. So watching the Pastor Paul Vanderklay live stream today, it always boggles my mind. Like they're sitting on the doorstep of the answers to the questions they're asking. And it's like they don't know they're sitting on the doorstep. And I'm, literally in the live stream comments screaming at them, typing in all caps. Hint. What is crypto Catholicism? Like, do you mean that people who understand hierarchy and structures and institutions and have expertise in them are more likely to either build them, run ones that other people build, be able to maintain them? Because, duh. And they don't see it very clearly. They don't see it, which just, I don't know. I don't know how you don't see that. It's that one next step that they're not making. But really, it's not a next step, right? They're just not looking up. The answer is looking up. And maybe they were looking up or not high enough. I don't know. But it didn't look like they were looking up to me. It seemed to be pointed horizontally along a flat plane out to the foxes or the lions, which is the worst framing ever. Although they did fix the framing into masculine and feminine, which was good. And that stream in particular, man, Sam made some really good contributions. Start out with a really bad frame and then actually explain something useful. But because it was a bad frame, there's no solution. So it's like so close. But not wrong, right? But also not helpful. And I'm a pragmatist. It's not helpful. Throw it out. Lots of descriptions work. Lots. I can take anything and describe it to you 6 different ways, and those descriptions will work. Maybe one of them is useful, though. And you can always do the useful for what argument. And sometimes that's a valid argument. But the point is, there are way more useless descriptions than there are useful descriptions. And we don't understand that. It's a deep asymmetry. The world is not symmetrical. And that's the problem. Like, we tend to flatten the world and make it symmetrical. And now we have binaries again. We're back to the binary thinking. And the good news is we get hippie Jesus. We get equality doctrine. Everyone's equal. We're raising up the poor. We're dragging down the wealthy. We're going to make everybody equal, right? But equality doctrine means we aren't supporting the people rising to leadership. Instead, we're criticizing them. We're dragging them down. We're critiquing them. We need to, instead, raise up, support, improve those above us, unless we ourselves would like to lead. Leaders cannot exist without support. What is the crisis of leadership? Well, there it is. You can have equality or leaders, but not both. It's not that hard. It's a simple answer. And those leaders are going to screw up. Just like you. maybe a little grace for the poor leaders who are making a sacrifice to do this leadership that everybody says they want, but nobody will submit to anyway because they want to live in an equal world with hippie Jesus. Because they can't read, by the way. That was hinted at in the stream. It's a good stream. I don't know if I can recommend it, but there's some good nuggets in there for sure. And this equality doctrine is sneaky because it makes life easy. If everyone's equal, we have fewer problems. And democracy implies equality. And one of the deep mistakes that Sam made in the stream, which just drives me nuts, oh, well, there's this democracy thing, and, we're trying to keep our democracy. We don't live in a democracy in the United States. We're a democratic republic. We're a republic. Why? Because democracy screws up. We know this. The ancient Greeks knew this. They wrote about it all over the place. It's in a wonderful tome you may have heard of called The Republic. It's in the Republic. About the middle of book 8. Talks about why democracy fails and how democracy fails. And oh my goodness, go read the middle of book 8 and then look around suspiciously. And then ask yourself, why? We have a simple answer. Plato had a simple answer and explanation, tongue-in-cheek though it may be, over-reduced ad absurdum it may be, because the Republic is nothing if not absurd on purpose. He had a simple answer to how democracy blows up, what it leads to, and why it leads there. Plato had that answer, and we're ignoring it. And it has to do with equality doctrine, although he wouldn't put it that way, or at least he didn't in the Bloom translation that I'm reading. By the way, check out the Texas Wisdom Community channel, where we go through the Republic. Actually, tomorrow should be our last day. We're going to finish the last half of book 10 and see what we find out. Finally, man, it's been too long. Love the book, though. It's been great. I'm glad Danny made me do it. I was forced against my will to read one of the classics. Never again, never again. Kidding. I might delve again. The crisis of leadership is the quest for equality. They're one and the same. The piety of poverty is an equality doctrine. It's not the only equality doctrine, but it's one that leads to equality, or the attempt at equality. And that's part of the problem. Another thought that I've been pondering lately is I have such a hard time with trying to get people to understand that to cooperate and corporation are linked. We come together in a body and give up our individualism, which allows us to improve overall, right? While contributing to something bigger than ourselves. A corporation is a body. It has a head. All good bodies must have a head. They won't last without one. Isn't that annoying? Someone has to lead. Oh. Yeah, but we don't have any leaders. No, leaders we have suck. Leaders we have always suck. In order to cooperate, we must be part of a body, a corporeal corporation, corporeal thing. That's how we cooperate. We operate together within a body. We marshal together. And that's how we get things done that are bigger than us. And maybe it's not the only way, but maybe it's the best and easiest way. Just worth thinking about. And I mentioned this earlier in the live stream there. They did it sort of at the end, sort of switch from fox and lion, which is just ridiculous. By the way, foxes are always evil in the Bible. Maybe being the foxes means you're the bad guy. Jacob Federacci pointed that out. It's like, oh, well, that sounds right to me. Which side are you on? The masculine and the feminine is a better frame. The problem is we keep talking about it, and the feminine should remain hidden. Talked about this before. There's a good movie my good friend and editor Michelle turned me on to called Sanctified. It's quite a good Western, very good Western. It's a good Western. It's modern, right? It's recent, rather. It's a recent Western. I think it came out last year or something. It has a really good embodiment of the divine feminine in it. Sort of impossible to overstate how well done it is. It's not sort of perfect. But also, I did finally go see this Godzilla -1 movie. And wow. So what you should be doing, you should quit this stream and go watch that movie now. It is good. It is really good. Godzilla appears like 4 times, which is the way the classic Godzilla movies were, by the way. I'm rather a fan of the classic Godzilla films. And I know a tiny smattering of Godzilla history and an insignificant amount of Japanese history, unfortunately for me. But also, like, I'm a Westerner, so there is that. The movie works on multiple levels. It is a personal struggle. The monster is archetypal. There is commentary on Japan, the Japanese people, and submission. And the divine feminine is there. And the divine feminine drives the movie. But the women aren't in the movie much. Every scene they're in moves everything. But they're just not there. They're not even in the beginning. We shouldn't be talking about the divine feminine in that way. We need to understand that the hidden is more powerful, that making a space for things to move into is important. Dating site. I don't need your job. I have my own career. I have a car. I have a house. We're running out of things to do with a man if he's not providing income, a house, a car. We're running out of stuff here. This doesn't look good. There's no space. Men need to conquer space and hold it. And some of them are bad at both, which is too bad. But most of them will rise to the occasion. We need that feminine archetype not told as a story, but shown as a participation. Not never talked about, not never discussed, but discussed in a certain way where it is a second order effect. Where it is an exemplification that causes an action not an action in and of itself. The divine feminine is not an action. It's the definition, the creation of a space. Talk too much about it, you'll destroy it. What do you think's been happening? Why do you think we don't have any leaders? What is there to lead? Exactly. Everyone's off being independent and individual. Well, we're all individuals. We can't have leaders. You want to be an individual? That's great. You can't have a leader. Guy, it's A or B. Like, that is a binary. Sorry. You can maintain your uniqueness and give it up to the higher thing that the leader is the head of, which is a body. And maybe that leader will be replaced. Although replacing leaders is always tricky. Most leader replacements fail. And that's sort of the trick of equality, right? You can think of it as being stuck in that binary. You could say male and female, and people will go, oh, wait, there's an exception, and therefore the male-female dichotomy is wrong. And it's like, well, no. Because you can make a third thing. You can say male-female exception, and you can treat the exception as though it is special or important. Because something has to be at the bottom. If you treat male and female equally, someone's going to get treated lesser. Because we can't treat things equally. They're not equal. And even if we could, we don't like it. As it turns out. Male, female, exception, the third thing. That re-enchants the world. Right? It gives you, lifts you up off of the horizontal flat world plane into, oh, there are these things that don't fit in these buckets, and that's okay. Now we have to do something to account for them, but not the same thing we do to account for the two more common cases that are the overwhelming majority, but also need separation. It gets you out of the binary. The binary is predictable, but reality won't give you that level of certainty that you desire. And when you're out of the binary, it can lead both up, maybe to heaven, or down, maybe to hell. The thing is, if you want to go up, you have to work at it, and you have to be careful. If you want to go down, you don't do much work at all. It's fine. You can escape the binary. You can say, look, because there's an exception to male and female, we need to name it. We need to categorize, to classify it, to put it in our ontology, to build a new ontology. We can rebel against the male and the female. We can push them down, make them lesser, and make this exception that is exceptionally rare, by the way, just going by the numbers, important. We can raise it up. If you want to use Jovian language, we can take the margins, the exception, and make them the center. But we'll just fall down into hell. And that's what's happening. And just a note, rationalism, it's a form of justification. It's not a justification for an action. All your justifications for actions are religious, fundamentally religious. People use the term metaphysics, they mean religious. See my video. All rationalism is post hoc. You're just justifying what happened. It's not a justification for action. Rationalizing is hard. We act first, we rationalize second. Most things we never rationalize. Did you rationalize why you got up and went to the bathroom and took the route that you did, or used the bathroom that you did, or whatever? I'm not saying nobody does that. Actually, I totally optimize all my routes through the house. It's really sad. I have all these formulas for figuring out, like, oh, I'm leaving my desk. I should pick up all my trash and throw it out and then hit the bathroom. And which way should I do that? And should I drop off my empty teacup first, right? And then do I carry the bag over, or do I go the other way through the house and then drop the bag and the trash into the trash and then put the teacup down and then go to? I do work all that out, but most people don't. I just happen to be insane, so different problem. No one does anything for a single reason. This is why rationality doesn't work. Like, you rationalize based on a single path, a single telos. But you don't do things for single reasons. Right? You need to have a way to satisfy the ego. We need to have a way to look good to others, right? And we need to serve something higher. We don't have to be right about whether or not that's actually going to work, right? But we do have to consider those three sorts of frames in order to actually do anything. If something just satisfies our ego but makes us look bad to the community, probably not going to do it. If we think we're serving some higher purpose and we just happen to look good doing it, maybe we don't care what the community says. Am I describing anything yet? Maybe it looks good to the community and we think we're serving something higher, so we'll take the hit. And they've got these tomes on psychology. I'm like, freaking really? Really? No. You don't need that. It's way easier. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a Muppet. You're a Muppet. We're all Muppets. It's good to be a Muppet. And with that, I think some wintergreen tea from the Table Rock Tea Company. Very good. It's unique tea. This was the one that's picked cold. I picked the tea leaves cold instead of in the winter, rather, instead of when they're ripe in the summer. And so, actually, the spring, I think they ripen in, I think they normally pick them in March or something, which is spring here. I'll go through my little listy here. Elizabeth, this is a big deal. Which is a big deal, Elizabeth? I don't know what I was saying back then. Christopher joined. Good to see you, Christopher. I hope all is well. What are you doing up? Oh, wait a minute. Is it the middle of the day where you are? I forget. Time is terrible. It's a terrible thing. I hope Christopher's still here. Met Christopher on Clubhouse. He's a wonderful person. Quite nice. I don't know if he's considered if he's a Muppet or not, but everyone should. Elizabeth, maybe not looking up. Maybe always look up, Elizabeth. What's the matter with you? Maybe acting with the body. Well, I mean, I think you should act with the body while you're looking up. I don't think you should act the body without it. Hanselman Hand. You were on that stream, right, Hanselman? You saw me going hand every 5 minutes. Going like, guys, you just said the thing that answers your question. Don't you see that? Some days I think they're all hopeless over there. Wrong is almost on time. Well, dude, there's a big difference. Hanselman was late? Hanselman, you were late? All right, that's it. Bomb Scotland immediately. I'll have none of the Scottish rebellion in my midst. Says the guy who's 3 hours from the Appalachian Mountains, where all the Scots-Irish rebels live in the United States. Hello. Hello, hello. That's too confusing. In a pluralistic society, it's impossible to have honor. Yeah, well, you can't stand out, right? I mean, it's not the pluralism that's the problem necessarily. It's the equality that's implied by the pluralism. Equality doctrine sneaks in all kinds of weird ways. All right, I'm always late. I must have no honor. That might not be the only reason you have no honor. Just saying. Hanselman, we have been given some leaders who are laughing stocks deliberately, it seems. Okay, and we weren't given leaders. Like, we participated in that problem, right? When you don't call people out, and like, I get it, calling people out is dangerous, especially people up above. You could get in trouble, but also, hello, equality Jesus is not the Jesus I know. Yeah, well, you flip tables. I love this, Ethan. I have to agree with Elizabeth. Equality doctrine turns infirmity into vanity. Yes, it does. It really does. It really, like, victim narrative stuff. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Hello. Democracy is what you get when those in power want to skirt accountability. They'll give you the appearance of democracy. True democracy is what you get when you're foolish enough to try and enact it. And you can have it for as long as you can keep it, sort of a thing. Yeah, see, Elizabeth liked your comment too, Ethan. Ethan insists I need to audit your Dante club, and Elizabeth is correct. Now he needs to start in the Inferno. Man, Ted talks about the Inferno quite a bit. Elizabeth, you would have loved Convivium. Oh my God. If you guys haven't heard the Convivium talks, 2 of them are out. Dr. Jim's and Father Eric's. Wow. They are amazing. They're amazing, amazing. Best talks in the Peterson sphere, by far. I should probably do links on those. Wasn't prepared today. It's been a long week, let me tell you. It's been a long week. Yeah, and Dr. Jim has a channel. I assume he's like testing it out or something. Quite good stuff though. I know I have these links somewhere. I will get them. Danny does not want spoilers on the movies. Of course not, Danny. And Ethan tells me to tread carefully. Why? I'm a pirate. There's nothing careful about pirates. Hikaru, this talk about man having to acquire space is interesting. Care to talk about it in a call in Discord or whatever any day? Yep. I have a channel with a few thousand subscribers. It is for people that speak Portuguese, but I am fluent in English. Well, I have a Discord server called The Mark of Wisdom. You can join anytime, and we can talk about that anytime you want. Or if you'd like to invite me somewhere, then yeah, I am available on the Discord and reachable through the YouTubes and the Twitters and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that stuff anytime, like anytime. It's, I mean, I'm still working through a lot of it, so I'm not claiming expertise. And I have to be careful what I say publicly because Elizabeth is always going to chastise me whenever I talk about any of that stuff. Hello. IBM/Fedora doesn't even want equality. They want some kind of false anti-white god. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, equality with lower power. Wow. Power is a problem, especially because nobody has a good definition. Except me, of course. I have good definitions for everything. I have a whole video on power. CW Weeks. Good to see you, CW. What is with Costco selling gold bars? Why not? They'll sell anything. And someone shouts, freedom! It sounds too much like some Scottish rebellion there, Ansel. Not that I don't love me a good Scottish rebellion, but Ethan, entry denied. I know, I've been denied. Handsome. Dr. Jim seemed to doubt Eliot's conviction on being an Anglo-Catholic and not Roman. Dr. Jim is an interesting character. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting him in person. He is just fascinating and so smart. It's really quick. Like, he is super quick. He picks up on things so fast. It is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, did I even point out the Convivium talks last time? I don't know. That's one of them. They're well worth, like, they're just, we had a great time. Talks were wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I know Father Eric's talk is here somewhere too. Also an excellent talk. Yeah, these talks were such good quality, and hanging out with everybody in what was actually a retreat was quite nice. Hello, pluralism also doesn't exist when tried. Yeah, well, people always have in-group preferences, right? Well, we have to. Hierarchy is inevitable. That's why there's no honor, because who do your actions honor? Offense to some, honor to others, not good. Well, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem if you're trying to have one group instead of many that get along in their own specialties. And this is the thing, it's weird, right? Oh, I believe in evolution. It's like, well, specialization is key to evolution. Specialization also requires groups and in-group preferences. I don't know what to tell you. It's kind of baked in. Anselman, but maybe he had a point that he might have been Roman in another European country. Yeah, well, who knows? If only. Yeah, on Proof Rock. Yeah, the Proof Rock. It was interesting. It was interesting being there. I really enjoyed that. That whole experience was wonderful. It was small, but it was really good. I had a great time, and I learned a lot. Like, I learned a lot at Thunder Bay, right? I learned a lot at the talks in DC. Those were nice. And Convivium, yeah, learned a lot. Got to meet Ted and had a blast. Like, it was real fun. It was busy. Like, it was just boom, 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 boom. There was no time to do much of anything. We were busy the whole time. You wake up with the group of guys, you go off to breakfast, go to your first couple of talks, you have some coffee, you go to lunch, you come back to do more talks, right? And at the end of the talks, you're out around the campfire. It was interesting. People reading poetry. We're talking about poetics and the poetic way of knowing, and it was wonderful. So, yeah, I think I'm all caught up here. Yeah, those talks were great. I know I went through a lot. But if you want to ask questions or share your own thoughts on things I went through, then feel free to jump in. Whoops, trying to do stuff and things are moving. Hello, glad I found out about your channels. Well, thank you. Whoops, worthwhile. Thank you. I hope so. Yeah. That's the point, is to add some value to the world somehow, right? And help people out, because people seem to be struggling with things that I'm kind of like, why are you struggling with that? You don't need to struggle with that. You can struggle with other much more fun and important things. I get it. Like, we struggle with things, and we all struggle with things, and we shouldn't think of it as suffering, but struggle, because we can turn it into joy. Or, of course, we could turn it into more struggle if we want, or more suffering. But I prefer to try to turn it into joy when I can remember. And you can't always remember. I mean, that's why you need other people too, right? Other people help you. Ethan, my friend. Well, thank you very much, sir. I shall keep up the good work just as long as I can, I promise. I'm doing my best here. Oh, Corey, welcome, Corey. It's good to see you. I don't know if you've been on a live stream before. Good that you're here. Corey's on the Discord all the time with us. So it's good to get crossover. Yeah, it was, I hope you catch up, Corey. I had some good stuff in the beginning. Hello. God gives you trials and suffering so you can grow. It gives you character. I don't know. I think he gives you struggle, not suffering. But, this is a big bone with me and suffering. I think suffering is inevitable, but what we get is struggle, and we can turn it into joy or more suffering. It's kind of up to you. You take any struggle and make it worse. And it doesn't even take that much effort. So if you're lazy, more suffering is free, or at least very low cost. But also, don't do that. Life has enough suffering. Don't make more for yourself or others if you can avoid it. And maybe you can't. Like, that's the other part of the problem. Like, you need that tension, that conflict, that struggle. You need it to grow, to build things. Like, you're not going to build a building without tension. It's not going to happen, right? You're not going to create things from other things without, some kind of conflict, right? Corey, Mark inspired me to get my new favorite psychotechnology, a whiteboard. It may come in handy. Good. Well, whiteboards are very handy, I would say. Very handy. Yeah, I wasn't on the ball today, so no drawing. No attempt at drawing. All saved my horrible drawing. It's always time consuming for me to draw anything on the board because I'm just terrible. I'm always trying to get better, though, because you need that struggle, that tension, that stress, that cyclicality, right? Hello. Good choice. I'm making a 3-inch e-ink Wi-Fi connected P2P note block. That sounds like fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. Using like Raspberry Pis or something. I've got an e-ink display for one of my Pis, for a Pi Zero. Actually, it's pretty cool. It's those e-ink displays are great. Nice if you don't need high refresh rate stuff. What else? Who else has got questions? Come on, that was a nice rambling monologue. There's so much meat there. I could dive in on any of it, or at least try to. I think we are missing sort of that. Why don't we have good leaders? We're trying to make everybody equal. What do you want? Leaders or equality? Pick one. Pick one. You're not having both. I vote leaders. It's actually a third way. It's not a dichotomy. It turns out that leaders can go in many directions, whereas equality can't go in any direction. So they're not opposing. They're not really binaries. You can have equality within the leadership. Dun, dun, dun. And, to the point earlier, like, you elect the leaders. Like, you pick the leaders. You enable the leaders. If the leaders are bad, that's partly your fault. And that sucks. But also partly your fault. Like, and if you defer, and a lot of people do, and like, fair enough, then yeah, you deferred, man. Like, it's not saying you can't complain about the outcome, but also you deferred. So you got to take some responsibility for that, right? And that's always the problem. Ethan, I liked what I heard of what you said regarding the feminine. Yeah. Too often people try to logicize the feminine, which is impossible and wrong. Yes. Yeah, well, even just speaking about it, like, why do you have to speak about it? Like, I don't understand. Like, why must you do these things? Wrong. Accountability and leadership. Yeah. Who holds leaders accountable? Those people below the leaders. Like, this is the problem. Everybody's got this postmodern top-down power from above narrative in their head, which is wrong, by the way. Completely wrong. Anything postmodern is just wrong and bad and evil. Don't do it. And so they're like, well, what we need is somebody who watches the watchers. And it's like, did you not see the mistake you made there? We need a leader for the leaders. In case the leaders need accountability, we can be accountable to the leaders. You're creating an infinite regress on the upside. That's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to create a lot more. Ikara, what is the space that needs to be conquered, for example? I don't know, dude. I don't make the space. Like, and why do we care? So I had a little incident. I doubt this will get back to her. But woman who runs the entrepreneurship meeting we were all leaving, and she went out to her car and grabbed this huge printer. It was freaking enormous. It was just big enough that you needed two hands to carry it. Of course, no problem, right? She's in shape and goes to the gym and whatever, right? It's not a weight issue, but it's still a two-person job if you're going to open a door. I mean, you can be as strong as you want. It doesn't help. And offered like, hey, would you like us to carry that? It's like, no. I'm like, well, I'm gonna open the door. There's the space. In that case, right? The space was the space to open the door. Because I don't care how strong you are, you're not carrying that thing with one hand. And even if you do, it's a pain and there's people there. Like what? Yeah, look, there are situations where, yeah, you got to go it alone. I get that. This was not one of those situations, right? But you have to leave the space. You have to ask for help, right? You can't be like, oh, I'm going to do it by myself anyway. Why? When you try to be an individual, you destroy the ability for other people to cooperate with you. But you did that to yourself. They didn't do that to you. Oh, the leaders are bad. No, you did that to yourself because you're part of choosing the leaders. You're part of supporting or not supporting the leaders. You can't just blame everybody else. You've got to understand how you're connected to the system and how the system is connected to you and what that means for your responsibility to the system, to the leader, to the corporation, the corporeal, the body that you're within. And maybe you don't want to be in that body, but maybe you don't have a choice either. And what is the space that's open? Well, watch Godzilla -1. All right, watch Sanctified. You'll see the space that opens up. You just got to think of it that way. You can think of it in terms of negative space, right? Like, wait a minute. There's lots of possibilities all the time. There's lots of potential everywhere. Which potential opened up as a result of the interaction with the divine feminine? An opportunity to cooperate, an opportunity to open a door, an opportunity to rescue someone. One of the earliest video games is Donkey Kong. What is the telos of Donkey Kong? To save the princess. If the princess is an individual and saves herself, there's no game. Is that better? Will guys who are actually the monkey at the top of the tower just make a monkey game? Absolutely, we will. Bored Augs, because we're just Augs, will just do random stuff, man. We'll just smash and build and smash. If no one's pointing. Which, the pointing might be important. And, if you haven't seen the pointing's right there. The women point to the higher thing. The man just points to what he built. He made the equality. She gave him the dream. It's one way to interpret this. There's lots of ways. We keep finding new ones. Good symbolism. Thank you, Sally Jo. It's Sally Jo's wonderful artwork. What is the space? I don't know. I'm not a girl, man. Ask a girl. Hopefully they won't tell you, but they'll show you, and then you'll be like, oh, and you won't notice. You'll just do the thing, because that's what we do. Like, guys just do the thing. It's like, yeah, whatever, man. I just do the thing. I don't know what the thing is. I don't care. Do the thing. That's actually one of the messages of Peterson. One of Peterson's deep messages that people don't notice is do the thing. What's the thing? It doesn't matter. Do the thing. The thing will appear to you. And maybe you'll be wrong about the thing, but you'll still do it because that's what you do. And you have to do it. You have to clean your room. You have to help out. You have to do the thing. You don't have a choice. You will be compelled in a random do the thing direction unless a space is opened or somebody points. Right? Oh, and I got to think about this. So next week there won't be a stream. That's for sure. I don't know if there'll be a stream on the 29th. This might be our last stream of the year. It's Both and. Is this a convoluted sense-making kind of project? No, there's nothing convoluted about anything I do. If it's convoluted to you, then you've overcomplicated something. Needlessly, by the way. You can believe the world is super hard and requires all this extra stuff that everybody's telling you, and, blue church, red church, my church, you church, garbage if you want. But I assure you, no need. Oh, I know. The best way to understand the world is that the politicians run everything and leaders tell you what to do and you do it. And it's like, no, that's not the best way to understand the world. That might be a description. Lots of descriptions work. This is the problem with descriptions. Infinite number of descriptions are accurate, but almost none of them are useful. And we get caught up. We want the hard answer. We're living the age of gnosis. Knowledge is like the highest value. Something's easy to understand, who cares? We'll throw it out. It has no value. We want it to be hard to understand because then we figured it out. That means we have more gnosis. The more gnosis you have, the better you are. Higher IQ you have, the better you are. It's bollocks. It's all nonsense and garbage. It turns out the people before us, they didn't need that knowledge and they get along just fine. Corey, I heard a frame, leadership versus authority. Leadership's power comes from below. Yes, that is correct. And authority is orthogonal to leadership. The leader can be the authority or not. The authority can exist in one or more other persons within a structure. And the leader is often beholden to the authority. Right? And this is why you should not listen to experts. Do not listen to experts. Experts have no skin in the game, as Nassim Taleb talks about. Read all Nassim Taleb's books. They're great. Skin in the game is one of them. The leader has skin in the game. The leader should listen to the expert and then decide if the expert is off the rails or how right the expert is or what the expert is right about. And no doubt the leader will get that wrong sometimes. But so will you. So yeah, I mean, it still sucks, but also not optional. And we need to get back to the things that aren't optional. Hierarchy is older than trees, as Peterson says. That might be a hint that maybe the thing to pay attention to is hierarchy, because it's not optional. It will appear. It will be evident. It will happen. Equality is not possible. Corey, the president versus advisor. Some say the advisors have the true power. Of course they do, because of course they say that. And sometimes that might be actually the case. But the leader decides who to listen to and what to listen to. So the power is still with the leader. Right? And sometimes the advisors are wrong. And the leader goes, yeah, you're wrong. And I know you're wrong. And I don't know how you're wrong because I'm not an expert. but I have an intuition. And maybe the intuition is more important or more interesting or just better. But sometimes, yeah, sometimes your advisors rule you too much. You listen too much to some muppet who runs some tyrannical thing within the government as a sub-government and makes more money than any other government employee and tells you bad things that are obviously wrong and anti-science, and then runs out and claims to be the science. Not that I'm talking about anybody in particular, mind you, but maybe I am. Thank you. You're most welcome, Corey, anytime. You know well that I'm happy to help you whenever I can manage to do so. I don't know how often I manage it, but I'm always trying. Oh, good Lord, another bad take. Benjamin Franklin, I think the trick is for the slaves. There's no such thing, dude. I don't know what to tell you. To role play, yeah, there's also no such thing. And revere the master and all the other rituals. That makes no sense at all, but this is typical for you. And this makes the master feel good. What? All the while the master is forced to feed the house and the slave. Conception of slavery is so puerile and childish that I just don't have words. I apologize for my lack of vocabulary. And none of that is anything like what you classified it as. But the good news, at least you're consistent. Also, you need one of these mugs, dude. Like, seriously. You need to drink coffee out of it every morning and make sure you read it. Contemplation is good for the soul. And that's, look, everybody's told everybody else they're smart. And it's like, maybe you're not. Maybe you can't understand certain things. Maybe there are the things you think you understand that you can't understand because you're just incapable of it. Or maybe you've traded off, like you just understand a lot about something, and then the other things you want to understand, you don't have the cognitive power for. I'm gonna do a video on cognitive load one of these days. Videos have been tough. It's been a bad month. It's been a bad month. My editor hasn't been around, so I've got one video ready to go, and I'm gonna have to edit it, it seems, which, oh well, these things happen. Hopefully I can remember to actually do that while I'm mired in all the other things I'm trying to remember to do. What do we got? Many terrible times when people chased achieving independent individuality, totally fake. Yeah, it kills everything. I hate it so much. It must not be tolerated. Tolerance is a problem. Both and. Cognitive load is heavy. I don't know if it's heavy, but your cognition is limited. And it's limited differently from other people's. I don't know. You have more cognitive load or less than me. I have no idea. It doesn't matter, right? It's certainly different. But you have a limit. I don't know where that limit is. Do you? The only way I know I've hit my cognitive limit is usually when I'm reaching for a word and it's not there, and I go, I'm probably cognitively overloaded right now. And that comes and goes. Sometimes all the words come to me. All the memories come screaming back. And sometimes no. Sometimes I'm like, what's my name? How much of a Muppet am I? What's your project? Do I have to have one? I have several projects. Which project are you referring to? My live streams? My live streams are just me being a pirate and navigating patterns, which is the name of my YouTube channel. So that's that project. There is some sense-making component there for sure. Oh, wow. We are like honored tonight. Casey, good to see you, my friend. Awesome. Yeah, we had all the best people here today. It's quite a stream. Although Jesse's not here to help me navigate my nice rambling monologue. But look, I mean, I'm trying to help people understand some of the patterns that are out there and get rid of some of the bad talk around foxes and lions, right? Not talking about things like the feminine, like, or at least limiting how you talk to them to a certain way, so we're not corrupting them. Right? Women should be precious, not powerful, and they're trying to be the masculine idea of power instead of being precious. Preciousness creates a space, to go back for Icaro, and in that space, men have something to protect. They know where to protect. Oh, there's a precious thing here. I need to build a thing around it to protect it. Yeah, you kind of do. That's why beauty moves us. Corey, Jesse, and Mark, the dynamic duo. Well, Jesse's not going to be here today, I think. So he's busy, I'm sure, which is unfortunate. It's lack of priorities. What's more important than the internet? Really, really. Yeah, I mean, I think the big project is wisdom communities, which we have to get back to. But I'm just caught up in, I am OBE, overwhelmed by events, as they say. There's a lot going on, and I wish it weren't. Jesse will be here, though. Interesting. He's just running really late. And Corey, maybe Sally can present herself. This isn't the request show, Corey. Come on. Sally's usually busy. She has this thing called a child, or some would argue she has two, but she has a child to deal with and a household to run, and maybe she has nothing to say, or maybe she doesn't feel like she can be coherent, because sometimes Sally's really aware. Like sometimes she's like, yeah, I'm not going to talk. Play Freebird? No, I'm not a musician, Corey. You can play Freebird if you want. I do like the shout out, though. I often go, Freebird, play Freebird. Yeah. But then again, I'm a troll, so, I'm just a troll with Sam Pell. Drink your Sam Pell. It's good stuff. And your Table Rock winter green tea, which is excellent. It is quite good, I assure you. Yeah, I think wisdom is important. Navigation is important. Aim is important. Orientation is important. And I don't hear too many people talking about these things, or at least not in a useful way, and putting them together. And so part of the project is to exemplify what I call the third way, the way that Jordan Peterson sort of opened up for us, right? The enchantment of the world is part of what I'm doing. And I get it. The world doesn't need to be enchanted. It's already enchanted. Really, you're enchanting people's view of the world. They have a view of the world. It's not properly enchanted. Trying to help them enchant it, to open it up, to give them that depth, that quality, not qualia. That's a bullshit science word people are fooling themselves with, right? To open things up. Casey, did the Plato group ever find out what justice is? Look, we're book 10 tomorrow morning. We're going to finish book 10. I don't know that Plato comes to a conclusion about what justice is, Casey, but I will let you know after tomorrow. I've not read. I do not read the book in advance. I read it the morning of the book club. That's just a little hack that I do. It turns out that's way easier than trying to remember what you read earlier in the week. So yeah. Uh-oh. Bruce. Let me actually put his camera on. Maybe he'll have good questions. Hey. Welcome, sir.
Just hopped on and finally had the time to do so.
Oh, it's good to see you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, you too, Mark. Sorry, I'm just hopping in. I don't have a lot of context yet. I just wanted to make sure I got in because It's been so long. So what is the topic du jour?
There is not a single topic. We've been talking a lot about the divine feminine. We've been talking a lot about the flat world. And binary thinking, right? Well, you've heard some of the topics because you've been jumping on the Discord all week. I mean, I went through what I would call a plethora of points, right, about all the different things we've been sort of covering. I mean, some of this is informed by conversations you and I had this week, for example.
Right. So. Well, let's rehash some of the flat world stuff, I guess. It might be useful for others. Yeah.
I mean, I thought I wish we had recorded it actually, right? Because we had this long
it would have been good
about all these flat world sort of tropes and what causes flat worlds, right? A bunch of causes from the flattening of the world, a bunch of ways to see the flat world, like when somebody's talking in binaries, right? When somebody's sort of in the world and they're coming up with this scheme that seems really perfect and super predictable, that's a flat world, right?
Sure. Yeah, it is indeed. The thing that's difficult is people flatten the world, but while they're doing so, they can't help but also live in the hierarchy of the not flat world. But it's interesting because they end up with a sort of blinders or tunnel vision, because they're acting as though the world is flat, all the while creating a series of values, or at least propositional values, that they claim are correct and absolute, which is really funny, because at the same time they'll say that these values are subjective or individually planted. But how do you connect with anyone or have relations with anyone if they are indeed individual?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the objective material reality, my OMR, comes in, right? Like they take this position, this objective position, and then they say they're looking at the world from above, ironically, pretending it's a flat world and predicting it perfectly. And of course, if you could perfectly predict the world, you would be above the world looking down on it. You'd also be technically God, by the way, which, I'm pretty sure, I haven't read it, but I have it on good authority, Bruce. Maybe you've read the book, that there's like a 2,000-year-old book that like talks about don't try to do that. Like don't play the God thing because you ain't that and all that. I don't know. I haven't read it, but
people do what's right in their own mind. And it's a constant battle for everyone to not create a new God. Right.
And not create themselves into a new God, which is even more insidious, right?
Self idolatry, or creating an idol of material, and so you'll always fall into that trap in a certain sense, because as you experience the world and your individual experiences, you find yourself evaluating these experiences in a kind of a pseudo vacuum, and so then you become the arbiter of what is good and what is right in your own mind.
Right.
But how does one get out of that circle or that frame? How do you transcend this individualistic flattening?
Right.
Well, there must be a supernatural intervention. Must.
Right. Or at least
that's the only way by which out of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then you find people looking and grasping for things outside themselves. Let's say empiricism or science, and they'll say that's outside myself. Right. But they evaluate the data that the empiricists give them with their worldview.
Right.
So now is it outside yourself, or are you evaluating this from your own worldview? Right. Everyone has a worldview, and you're evaluating it from a flattened frame.
Yeah.
And so that trap is it's a rough trap. That's why I would presuppose that one must have supernatural intervention to be lifted out of that frame.
Yeah. Well, and I think just to address Casey's question, do you have an idea of what justice is? I mean, ultimately, I think what Plato is actually talking about is, because again, he does absurdly place everything into binaries in the text, which is just hysterical to me that nobody mentions how absurd that, if this is true, then certainly, Socrates, you're right. It's like, really? It's so funny.
Well, in the same way that you'll say that you haven't read the 2,000-year-old book, I don't have enough skill or knowledge on Plato. So maybe,
well, you shouldn't. It will make you angry, because you'll be like, why are these people talking about this book? They clearly haven't read it. Because that's actually my conclusion now, is everybody who says they read the Republic didn't. Or they have low reading comprehension. I don't know. But they're clearly missing the point, because the point really is a binary frame, or a frame that works with an ontology, cannot get it justice. Like, he's quite clear about this. So in that way, I would say the Republic is a re-enchantment of the world. It says, the freaking text opens with the whole concept being, you cannot understand justice by yourself. Justice on a desert island makes no sense anyway, right? You don't need justice if you're by yourself. You're an individual. Individuals don't need justice. Individuals can't have justice, in fact. You want to be an individual? No justice for you, my friend. No, really, I can prove that. And Plato does, right? But you also can't understand justice in relation from you and one other person, or you and several other people. It's not possible. What Plato actually does is build a city. Why? Inside the city, he builds classes of people. He builds a hierarchy. He justifies all of this. Like, this is the point of the Republic, justifying that. The parable of the cave. Yep, that video is coming. I apologize. It's taking me longer than I thought. The parable of the cave is the polar opposite of what you've been told. 0 people escape from the cave. 0 people can escape from the cave. You can't escape from the cave. You are born into the position that you're born into. And the people that are born into a higher position are of a different class. And there are several classes. And the whole point is you are supposed to take the people, the philosophers, the true philosophers, not the sophists. Sophists are bad. I think Plato doesn't like sophists. You are supposed to take the true philosophers who are heading towards goodness. They're heading towards goodness. And you, as the creator of the city, by the way, which is an interesting thing nobody ever talks about. So Plato and Glaucon, in this case, are creating the city, have to drag them away from that, even though it's not good for them. Explicitly, Glaucon says, Socrates, you're dragging the philosophers down to the lowest rung of the city to evaluate it and make changes, for which they will be derided. The people that they say, you need to change this, we're the philosophers, you need to change this, are going to jeer at them and not believe them and be upset with them. Yes. And Glaucon says, you can't do that. They're on their way to more goodness. This isn't good for them individually. And Socrates says, yo, dude, like, this is for the city. We started with this is for the city. So in the Republic, the greater good is the greater good of the city, not the greater good of the person and not the greater good of the class. And that gives you a re-enchantment of justice. Oh, justice has nothing to do with you. That's right. There are no individuals in the Republic. Individuals don't exist in that book, because individuals can't have justice. That's proven in the text. It's also obvious. I know you haven't thought about it, not you specifically, Bruce, but like, Muppets do not think about these things. And people oversimplify it, and they start talking about emerging from the cave. That's not in the text. It's nowhere in the book. I'm sorry, nowhere. It's not there. If you want to know more, Texas Wisdom Community, and maybe I'll grab the link for that. Yeah, it's a great little playlist that we have. But that's book 7 in particular, the parable of the cave. Plato doesn't believe in a flat world, clearly.
Clearly, yeah. Well, in this, so I'm trying to square all of that. Again, I haven't read enough Plato to make educated assessments of it. But from the synopsis you gave, is there a sense in which they're stating the individuals are the creators, or are they stating that creation exists already?
Nope. They skip over creation entirely, which is an interesting theme, because you'll notice that most, we'll call them modern philosophers, which has nothing to do with ancient Greek philosophy, by the way, they skip over it. All scientists skip over creation. They're all creation deniers, every single one of them.
Okay.
Creation denial is the core and the key to scientism. It's what actually creates science.
Sure. So how do they square where things originate?
No, he doesn't. That's not the purpose of the book.
Okay. Well,
that's the whole point, is that's not in there because he's not trying to resolve that problem.
Right. Is he presupposing it or denying it?
Yeah. No, they presuppose that things exist.
Right. That there's unity among diversity, that there is all sorts of particular constants, right? There must, right?
Right.
That would be the only way to do that.
Right. I mean, it's just not on their radar to talk about. Casey, so everything is about right relationship, huh? Yeah, everything is about right relationship. Now, Corey thinks something's clippable. Corey, clip away, dude. Like, start a channel.
It's clippable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the Republic, the creator is Socrates and Glaucon, and they're the creators of the city explicitly. So they're playing God explicitly. And the fascinating thing, Bruce. Here's the fascinating thing. Like, here's the nuclear weapon. This book. Okay. Do you know what's full of? Full of references to the gods. Full. Chocked full. Everywhere. And like, it's deliberate, right? Everywhere they run into a problem with the logic, with the reason, where they reach the end of logic, which is not hard to do, by the way. I know no one does it. I get that. You're not to blame. You've been told you can do something you can't do, right? Or told you can do something almost nobody can do.
Sure.
They appeal to the gods. Every time they run into a logical error block, they appeal to a god or a goddess or some spirit of a god. Welcome, Jesse.
You can't get away from it.
No, you can't. Well, they don't even try. Everybody who uses the Republic tries. And I'm like, dude, you didn't read the book. They don't try. They're like, yeah, eventually he's going to have to resolve this for us.
Well, yeah, it goes back to, like, throughout all of time and all of the studies of people groups, every people group is homo religioso, right? They have a god tier. It's built in. Now, do you submit to the god? Now that's the question. And how do you do it? But out the gate, they're presupposing it everywhere.
Welcome,
it's
Jesse.
Innate. Hi, Jesse.
Did you
hello?
Have you been hearing what we've been saying, or
until Discord and StreamYard started to just fart on me?
To fight the battle to the
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Software is broken. See marks.
Oh man.
Is it ever?
Yeah. Everything is so broken now. It's like, holy crap. I don't know how much longer things are going to hold together.
AI out to the rescue, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Or solar batteries. We just need solar power and solar batteries. And then once everyone has access to this new technology, we'll all be equal again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the great equalizer.
Yeah.
AI will make us all equal.
Gosh.
Equally dumb.
Yeah. Well, you can think of gods as just spirit or team spirit or telos. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a deified thing. You know, the Mongols essentially deified war, or battle, or adventure. That was like, they didn't have a supreme being that they necessarily worshipped.
Yeah.
Which is where we're at.
Yeah, they're in rebellion.
At what point is rebellion a function of leadership and a component of rebel if his claims are justified makes him a hero or a leader? Because corruption is inevitable. Like, it's the
Sure,
quote is like, you're a rebel for as long as if that the previous system holds, and then
well, you've inherited rebellion from your father, right? That's the nature of man. And so corruption's inevitable as a result. So life is a constant battle against the internal rebellion.
you inherit traits of your father's style of leadership.
Yeah, which are flawed and corrupted and cursed. Yeah. Unless we're claiming blank slate or perfection, which I don't think either. Many people don't claim that anymore.
I would appeal to morality. I
Yeah.
think obviously a good leader has been brought up in at least a decent household, or had his character formed through struggle, which was brought up earlier.
Sure. The morals arise from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They're not created. They're discovered and submitted to.
Yep. What's a tradition?
Yeah. It's one way of seeing it.
Yeah. Well, it is a tradition, even if you don't like it. Like the tradition, the rebellion, right? Okay, I'll meet you halfway. Yeah, rebellion is a tradition of corruptible leaders that which prefer gains of a certain type over the communal good or the common good.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a possibility of that being inheritable, then of course you're going to get rebellion, because you're going to get rebellion from both sides of that.
Sure.
Well, I think part of rebellion is, like, if you're told you're an individual, you're in rebellion against everything. Like, because you're trying to separate yourself from everything. That's what an individual is. It's apart from everything. You cannot cooperate if you're an individual. Like, you can say, like, well, I have the option to cooperate. No, you really just started from a poor position of rebellion, and what you're doing is you're trying to decide what the relationship is going to be, as though you're an authority on the relationship already, because you're already in rebellion, because you're trying to be an individual. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, Bruce, what makes someone a hero in your books? Well,
that's tough. I would say the way that we define hero today and generally speak of it would be love of neighbor. Like, I would quote scripture and say, no greater love than one who laid down his life for his friend. So I think that's the ethos of what we're getting at when we say hero. The sacrifice archetype, the placing the good above pragmatism, that sort of thing.
Replacing the good above pragmatism. What do you like?
Yeah, there are some practical outcomes that may not strive toward the ultimate good, albeit good in your own mind or circumstantially, but they're not ultimately correct. They are correct in the pragmatic sense, but it's a small frame. It's a low resolution frame. So that a hero wouldn't be so. I can't think of the word now. They wouldn't be so terse or quick to do something for the practical application and result. They would be striving toward a higher good, which may result in denying some of the practical outcomes or pragmatic approaches, in the here and now, or the day. Right.
Have you seen?
The hero
Can you
hero
point to
looks
an
forward and
example?
upward.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely true. But going back, where have you seen that? That sort
Well,
of
anytime a person compromises for the day, and doesn't look forward to the betterment outside themselves. Anything, anytime you look to satisfy the desires of the day and sacrifice the good of your neighbor tomorrow, you're not in a heroic position. At least that's how I would go with that.
a justified. It would be like a justified retreat. It would be like, I could claim glory on the battleground by trying to charge ahead and seize the day, or I for the good of the war, not the battle, we have to retreat and somewhat and recoup and refine our resolve in order to. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, so I would say that's, yeah. I mean, that's one way to put it. Sure. If to try and think of a practical example would be looking instead of changing hearts and minds, you're looking for practical outcomes. In war, for instance. Let's let's kill a terrorist leader for the sake of checking the box to justify the reason we're there, as opposed to changing hearts and minds, which may take longer, more sacrifice, lots of due diligence. Or we could just off with his head, and say it's good, and just kick the can down the road.
Right, and that's how you get the French Revolution, rebellion.
That would be one of it.
Yeah.
And I think Marcus said that's the French Revolution is so crucial when it comes to what we're talking about today, at least in other conversations we've had.
Yeah,
that ethos.
Absolutely. Well, and like, if you want to know what a hero isn't, right? So you've got the English Revolution, right, where they behead the king, right? And then it's like, wait a minute, what happened there? And part of the problem is that no one wants to step up and lead the country. They're all afraid to do it. And so the protectorate is invoked, and a king is actually reinstalled under the name of protectorate. I was like, wait a minute. In the French Revolution, it's the same thing. They behead the king, and nobody wants to step up. Nobody wants to be heroic, because the hero is always the person that steps in and does something in a space where no one else is willing to do it. Whether or not that entails sacrifice, I mean, I would argue always entails sacrifice, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. And the thing that struck me, Bruce, which I'm actually shocked at, by the way, is that your description was very flat world in my mind. Like, the hero really is about that new ground, like leading something. Like, heroes always lead in some way, right? Like Jason the Argonauts, like somebody's setting the pace, somebody's defining the telos, and then convincing people to go along.
Maybe I wasn't clear enough. I agree with that. I do. Yeah, the hero does set the pace, but it's not short-sighted. The hero can't be short-sighted.
The time frame thing is tricky. One of the things I mentioned in the monologue was having that higher frame all the time. Like, you need that lens, that looking up, to put all the other lenses in effectively.
I totally agree.
One lens to rule them all. If you want to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Yep. I would totally agree with that. I do think the unfortunate part of when we define hero is we must be careful not to create a new idol. That hero is pointing, not replacing.
Right.
In my worldview, which I think is correct, but they cannot replace, and they must point you to God. They must point you with direction. They cannot take the place of God. Although many people do that, they put them in the place of God.
Right. Well,
in their minds or practically or however.
They must point to some aspect of the highest. No, I mean, see, because that's where we get into trouble. We go like, point to this thing that's way bigger and can't be pointed to. Like, I don't know. You can point at an aspect of it. You can point a small section, right? You can't really point. You can point up, but in that upward pointing, even though it is a point, like actual point, right? There's more bad along the bottom of the triangle than there is good at the top of the triangle, for sure. In that point, there are an infinite number of points, actually. And so you can't point at the point, right? You can just point towards it. And I think that helps to prevent. The difference is, are you creating an idol or are you creating an icon? Creating an icon, it has a way in and through. And if you're creating an idol, then it stops at the thing you've created, whether it's a physical object or an image of a hero as a god or whatever. And I think that is the mistake. I know sort of Casey mentioned this earlier, right? He had some comment. I got to find it. Casey, I think the gods were more like things to be bargained with or appeased. No, they could be bargained with or appeased. The gods in ancient Greek culture were very human. They were like human plus plus. It's the best way to understand them. And the reason why they're like that is that they are a contrast for the Greeks, for humans as such, right? And so if you had the power to make a lightning rain down and you were a jealous, philandering husband, what would that look like? Oh, we'll call it Zeus. Well, fair. Right? If you were a jealous wife with all these powers and this ability to be sneaky, as all the goddesses have, by the way, if you watch carefully, if you read the mythos carefully, Bullfinch. What would you do? Oh, well, there's Hera. What would happen if somebody said, oh, this is a gift for the most beautiful goddess, and there were 3 goddesses in the room and it just kind of appeared? What would happen? That's a good question, right? Like these are the sorts of stories it tells. The gods are, in one way, in ancient Greek mythos, in one way, they're all too human, right? And this is why I actually think, for real, modern science fiction is actually equivalent to ancient Greek philosophy. And
I would agree with that. Yeah,
real quick.
As much as I know of ancient Greek philosophy, that makes total sense to me.
You're using what you're doing is you're making a bunch of assumptions. So it's like, okay, assume a world with no oxygen, right, and no sunlight. What would those creatures look like, right? So you're making a bunch of assumptions to highlight 1 or 2 aspects, to explore those aspects. That's what science fiction does. That's also what the ancient Greeks do in their philosophy. So if you read The Republic, and I don't actually necessarily recommend it because it is a hard book to read, and you should probably read it in a book club like I did, and not try to read it on your own at all, you'll notice that they very much set that up. They very much set up, and it's all throughout the book. Actually, it's a very complex text. They set up these scenarios where they're highlighting one thing there. It's all contrast, right? It's this or this, it's that or that, right? And it's all absurd, but on purpose. But they're doing that so that you can see one thing. They can highlight one thing. Of course, the Republic as a text, the highlight really is justice, right? That's the big highlight. But there are other little highlights along the way, like in the parable of the cave. The highlight in the actual parable of the cave, before they expand the metaphor out, by the way, and change everything, and it's no longer about a cave. Nobody mentioned that to you, I know, but also, right? The contrast is between the people who are trapped at, we'll say, the lowest level of the city. As it turns out, that's what the equivalent is. You don't know that when you first read it. It's the opening part of book 7. And the people who put the things on the wall that those people react to. And in the second contrast, as a result of that, setting that scenario up, is what if we could, which we can't and we won't, take somebody out of that, and then they see that it's a play, and then they go back. Oh, well, here's what would happen if you would do that. But it's never done. It's implied that it can't happen. So it's very much contrast all the way down.
He's gone.
I know, he left us. Poor internet. He doesn't even have Wallaby internet like you do.
Oh yeah, unreliable, expensive, silly. It was a heat wave here 3 days ago now, and the media was trying to push out a message. You can only use your aircon between this time and this time. It's like 90% of social media channels were just like, yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we already pay too much for electricity, so we're just gonna like actually stay sane and not go crazy because you don't want the yeah. But we would need to, get into renewables. It's like, yeah, not in a country where you have 40, which would be 100 and almost 120 Fahrenheit heat wave days. So yeah,
Wow.
and it's a different heat than obviously America, and it's a different type of light too, which is people don't want to talk about. This the quality of light and the quality of the heat determines what it feels like, the phenomena of actually being in hot weather.
Well, and how you get affected by it
Yeah.
with your body.
Oh yeah.
One of the remarkable things, right? So I used to live in New England. In New England, in the winter, when you're out in the sun, you really don't notice. In South Carolina, in the winter, when you're out in the sun, it's nice and warm. It's always nice and warm because you're way further down on that big old globe. I know the Earth is flat, but yeah, it's
Like a pineapple.
interesting, the difference.
It's a pineapple. Yeah, this is a
No,
pineapple.
actually, my Earth is flat. Like I don't.
Oh right.
I don't know how anybody else interacts with the world, but I sort of interact.
We should go to that ice wall sometime. We should just make an expedition to the ice wall. Well, ice walls, depending on your flat world mythology. If there's like a series of ice balls, there's a meme actually where they've got all the Greek, or no, not all the main Egyptian gods, and every time you go outside of an ice wall, it's a different Egyptian god. So there's a consecutive ice walls.
That's funny.
Yeah, like someone had too much imagination here. Yeah.
Well, and memes is part of the spreading out, right? There's so many memes, and anybody can create them, and so we're making more gnosis as time goes on, and it's just disconnected from everything because individuals are making that, or people who are trying to be individuals are making memes, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? You're contributing to the flood, which is not to encourage Ethan to stop making memes because I love his memes, but but also memes are evil, so it's pluses and minuses.
Getting back to the topic raised, and I only raise it because I've been slightly thinking about it this week because I did a tweet about Rebel Moon coming out, and they have this interplay between rebels and leaders, and they kind of juxtaposition the two, and I was like, this is the worst use of framing for a Hollywood movie ever, because if you're living in a corrupt empire, how do you sanctify that? How do you participate in that corruption? You actually have to. You're not rebelling if you're leading other people towards the good. And the way I would define a hero is someone who's thinking about the system and maintaining the system and bringing order or restoring justice to the system. A rebel is only thinking about a singular goal. They're just thinking about what the outcome is. How do I maintain that? How do I, build myself up rather than, rather than what the hero does. The hero does is kind of,
well, the motivation's wrong.
Yeah.
For the rebel.
Yeah, it's looking to the highest. Whether the rebel's often just going on a journey.
The rebel's concerned about a perceived injustice to them or others.
Yes.
They're not concerned about maintaining order, right? Despite the sacrifice that implies. And the sacrifice is some people are going to suffer unfairly, for sure. But you can't replace it with nothing because hierarchy is inevitable. And the thing you replace it with might be worse. Right.
Yeah, see Russia. The other thing I was going to say about how do you find what a hero is not, like defining against, just just do it for intellectual reasons, is that when a hero dies, does the system hold? Like, have they maintained order enough? They left enough capacity in the system, soft S use of the word system, that the good works continues on into the next generations, and there you have your tradition.
Heroes strengthen systems.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
I like
essentially.
that.
Well,
I
because
like
it's
that.
never just
That's
one
good.
hero. It's never just one hero too. It's often a
This gets into
yeah.
the whole great man theory. It's like the great man theory
No,
is
I'm just going to
correct.
talk He-Man. I was just going to talk He-Man. You don't have to go Great Man Theory. You just talk He-Man.
There's no greater man than He-Man. What are you talking about? Now you're confusing me.
Yeah, exactly.
When that's He-Man in particular is interesting, right? Because it's all alter ego based. So it's what
Yes.
PBK calls secret sacred self. And yeah, that's a tricky. Oh, Casey wants the He-Man theory. Okay, absolutely. We'll come up. Where's the mug, Jesse? Where's the He-Man mug?
I'll go get it. All right, I'll go get it.
All right, we're gonna get the He-Man mug. Yeah, I like that definition that the hero is basically the one that strengthens the system. And leaders often sacrifice, and when people don't want to be leaders, it's no wonder. Being a leader is a huge sacrifice. It's huge, and people don't want to be leaders, sure, and also leaders won't give up leadership if they think it's going to make things worse. They're heroes because they're keeping leadership is a sacrifice. If you're leading the country, you're not taking care of your family because you can't do both, actually, right? Where's the mug, Jesse? Show us the mug. There it is. Yes. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Now, I've actually already destroyed 2 of these mugs. That's why this one is now going to live in this box.
Oh no!
I have another mug too, and another talking point. But the point of this is that all these people pictured here are heroes. They are part of the spirit of the hero. They all participating together in a band, right? They kind of they all serving one telos. One person may have more authority in the band because they are the leader that everyone looks up to, but everyone participates in supporting the leader to achieve the highest principle.
He's not the authority.
Well, yeah.
He-Man's not the authority. It's a good example of not the authority, actually. Because he's got the advisor. The advisor's the authority.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would say that's all the authority. All He-Man's doing is leading. What's he doing? He's focusing to telos so that other people can participate in whatever the authority is pointing at effectively, right? And the authority doesn't tell the leader what to do, but the authority does constrain the leader by pointing.
Yeah.
And this is feminine versus masculine power, right? Like feminine power is pointing. Feminine power is not lifting the thing. It's pointing at the thing, and then the guy figures out how to lift it. Like that's,
Well, on that whole idea of the secret safe itself, there's often a phrase by the power of Grayskull, and that's how he kind of goes from he's inspired essentially, or he's encaptured, and he goes to the warrior archetype. Which I would say it's important to acknowledge where you get your power from. The secret safe itself is saying the power's within me. I don't have to do anything because I'm totally.
Well, and I control.
I can self create in the world rather than I am procreating because my power, my spirit, my telos comes from a higher source.
I like that.
That's it.
Secret sacred self is I'm participating better with me, and that's wrong. You can't do that, right? Whereas the hero participates better with the system, right? And invokes the system as part of the expanded identity that allows them to hero. And I can see now, thank you, Jesse, this is a great gift, why there's a confusion about that. Like, wow, okay. So actually the message is correct, but people are interpreting it wrong because of the individualism. Again, because individualism is going to kill us all. Like individualism is going to talk about spreading out, right? And a flood. And we have a flood of persons who are trying to be individuals, and of course you can't. And so you're just fooling yourself, and now you're just making a slave out of your Uber driver. Well done, Muppet.
You're also appealing to materialism, and also, yeah, exactly. You're a Muppet. You're appealing to material goods. It's also you're appealing to this idea of chemistry, that we just need to combine the right things together, and then this self-generation thing can happen.
Well, and I think
A myth.
I think the secret sacred self is the thing that denies you the ability to do the one thing that you actually need to do. The world needs you to be better. Better. You can't do that with the secret sacred self. You can't. It's not possible. Right? Because all you're saying is, I need to be a better me. I was like, no, you do not need to be a better you. The world, the thing outside of you, needs you to be better. The world needs you to be better, more than you are today. And that's part of what's missing in this individualistic hell that we're being subject to by all these Muppets who want to be individuals. Just stop.
There you go, Corey. There's a snapshot of He-Man theory in 5 minutes.
There's your He-Man theory, Casey. Use it well. Use it well. Use it wisely. Use it well.
Yes. And if you actually, the 1980s Dolph Lundgren movie on He-Man is actually not bad on all this. They strangely got a lot right, even though the production quality is so low. They actually got, there's the feminine is also is kind of it's not pushy, it's not extravagant, it's seen and heard, but not to the point that it's the main focus. He-Man himself is not, as to Mark's point, is overbearing. He's there to lift others up to achieve a common goal. It's quite good, and it also has this whole thing about music, which is close to my heart.
Casey claims you'll be seeing my PhD thesis on the He-Man theory in 2030. You can write it.
Sure. Great.
Come on.
It's chat
Masters of the Universe is a funny bad movie.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Jesse, did you see Godzilla -1?
I need to. I desperately need to.
Oh man, we gotta have a conversation once you do. I gotta talk to you.
There's also Miyazaki has the hero and the heroine. Heron? Yeah, Heron. Miyazaki of Spirited Away. Yeah, Spirited Away fame. House Moving. Oh, Mark, have you seen House Moving Castle?
No.
I need to get you to see that. I need to get you to see that.
I'll remind me, and I'll get it at some point.
Yeah.
It's almost travel time. Next week I'll be on the road.
I think that's I think you're gonna get a lot there. It's a lot of great symbolism and good storytelling, which are different. They're different things. You can have
entirely.
a good story. Yeah, you can have a good story, but the symbolism can just be ugh. And vice versa. You can go like, oh, they're messing up this story, but the symbolism here in certain sections they've got right. Like Free Willy would be a great example of that. I'm not going to tell you which way Free Willy story.
Well, that's why I'm
a Free Willy if it's a good
Yeah, I'm happy that Peugeot's doing stories now, because he's got he's the symbolism guy, so I think he's got the symbolism down, and then to add the story to it, not narrative, by the way, story. See my video. Story, narrative, archetype, very important. Yeah, I can't like Godzilla -1 was just shockingly awesome. just blew me away. It's like, what the hell is going on? This is fantastic. Not only that, like a lot of people, and this always like surprises me, they don't know about the Godzilla symbolism. Godzilla represents the US. Like they don't understand any of that. And I'm like, man, because that's in the new one. And it's just like, no, this is Japan struggling with Japan. That's what Godzilla is. It's Japan struggling with Japan. I love it. It's great. It was so good. In fact, it's got to be the best Godzilla movie. And I'm walking out of the theater going, hey, it's better than those 3 garbage movies the Americans made. Oh, man. Americans don't even understand what Godzilla's about. It's like, dude, you guys, I don't know what you watched, but you missed the point of Godzilla entirely. And then you just did these random monster movies for no good reason other than to destroy all the goodness in the world, apparently, because how dare you, you heretical bastards. If I ran the world, they'd all be on treason charges against humanity itself. You've committed treason against humanity itself for making this crappy Godzilla movie. You must die.
The 90s one is not too bad, though, from memory. I need to rewatch it as part of my 90s. I've been, as one of my projects this year is to show Christina all the different movies that from my childhood in the 90s, and then go, yeah, can you see it now? All this stuff actually came true. It wasn't necessarily true in the moment, but it became true, and that's where Godzilla comes into New York City and lays eggs. And it's like the proper sequel to Jurassic Park. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I can see that. Is that the first of the 3?
No. The 90s one, I think it's like 95 or something like that. It's also got the French guy in it from Ronin. It's its own singular identity. They just made a Godzilla movie in the 90s, and then they stopped, and then they brought it up, somewhere around 2016, I think it was. I'm not sure why 2016 keeps coming up.
I got it. I had this whole set of like 5 things that happened in 2014
that's right. Yeah.
Can't get that list back. I'm like, no, I need that list. That list is really important because it's Gamergate and blah, 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 blah. And I
YouTube. It actually, Godzilla was 2014, Mark. So there you go.
Yeah.
With Gareth Edwards. Yeah.
I knew that. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to remember it or anything. No. 2014 is the year, man. Like, you say what you want.
The movie about Japan featuring American people. Yeah, in America, about a bomb. Yeah.
Everything changed in 2014. And it was obvious then. And people, and the only people that caught it, well, the only one I know that caught it and got it perfect was Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin. Freaking nailed everything.
Death of the Father is there too. The Wandering Son. Yeah. It's all.
But a bunch of events occurred, and that was sort of there were events that, other than Gamergate, that were like, no, this is clearly the game has changed. It's like Tron Legacy, right, where he flips the arena. It's like, whoa, yeah. Tron Legacy has so many good symbols. It's like, wait a minute, who wrote that? I need to speak with them immediately. Did you know what you were writing when you wrote this movie? Because here, and here. The best thing about Tron Legacy is rejection of Western Buddhism. I'm like, yes, the correct rejection of Western Buddhism right in that movie. Bang! Western Buddhism is a failure. Sorry.
Yeah, even I finally watched Tron this year, and I was the original, and it's that has nothing to do with video games at all.
No.
Yeah. You may as well call it pre-Matrix. Like that's the level.
Yeah, the Matrix comes out of Tron for sure.
Yeah. No one will see that but us. But
the individualistic but completely incorrect and outright evil misinterpretation of Book 7 of the Republic, Plato's Cave, which I will be doing my video on.
I'm still stuck in the Iliad. And by the way, in the Iliad, when the gods are interacting in the war, some gods grant powers to humans to see the gods interacting. And what's the line? I'm going to take the mist from your eyes so that you
Yes.
can see the gods on the battlefield, so that you know not to attack them,
Right.
so that you
Right.
will survive. It's not so I'm enchanting your world further so that you're more empowered. It's to save you because
Well, it's to
because,
save
because
you by giving you more sight of the
yeah,
world that you cannot normally see.
see, yeah.
Right. And so something external is granting you the removal of mist. Right. In other words, it's removing a filter for you. Because
Yeah.
that's how the world works. The world works through removal of filter, not through addition of things.
I
In
think he does.
science, everything's additive.
Oh yes, which is yeah. Do you want
Nobody
to live
knows
in
that,
an?
Jesse. Jesse, I just sit there every day and I go, nobody knows this? Really? You
Well,
guys
like
haven't noticed this at all? None of you? I'm like, what planet am I on? How do you not notice this?
there's in music technology, there's a thing called a synthesizer, and most synthesizers are based upon two different types of information. One's called the additive process, and one's called the subtractive process. The subtractive process basically founded most of your rock music, and it's through a guy called Bob Moog, and his filter system, which was removing things in different capacities. The Buchla guy on the West Coast was additive. We're going to keep stacking things up and up and up and up, and hopefully, if you get enough things stacked right, if you merge enough sonic material together in some sort of voodoo like thing, the parts will be greater than the whole. And that there you go. There's the Bob Moog changed the world theory, Corey.
There you go.
Literally. And then when we moved music technology back towards modular synthesizer, additive process.
Right.
Wonder what happened to most Western music. Spiraling all the way.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, you can actually have, sorry, just to be clear, you can have modular synthesizers that do follow the principle of subtractive, of purity, or of filtering and pinpoint. But yeah.
Oh, I'm going to take this. What about digital versus analog? Okay, digital is evil. That's science. It carves up the world, right? It creates discrete linear things. All right. Analog is more real. It's actual. And it's more in keeping with the world that you're connected to. It's not that hard. And that's why, and they've done this is the fun. No one talks about this. They've done the tests. Yes, you can tell the difference between a vinyl record and a CD. Like most people can they can't tell you what the difference is. And it's very, very clear that different people are picking up on different differences, but people can tell that there's a difference. Even though science says there's no freaking way that you can materially tell the difference between a CD and a record. Oh, yes, you can. And nobody knows how. And then they'll invoke qualia, which is, again, a garbage bullshit frame for quality, which science has nothing to say about. And that's the problem. Analog has a body and a quality that does not exist in the digital realm.
And this is what's happening. A needle is going down onto a flat surface and essentially scratching it and making a resonance, and a hyper resonance. It's a hyper object, and you have a filter, something that's producing your sound, but it's also an embodied object. It's also singular. You can't use that for anything else.
But
it's
it's
inspired, technically.
But it's continuous. Way more important. It's continuous. Yeah. It has no stopping points in the middle.
Yeah, okay,
Digital
that's what you mean.
is broken apart into discrete components.
Yep.
And that is huge. Like, that is the difference between the two sides of the ways of thinking. So if you look at the knowledge engine model, a video I've posted many times, you can find it easily on my channel, Navigating Patterns, you will see the difference. And that difference is huge. And it is a difference in the way we think. We can think in a digital, discrete, linear fashion, or we can think in the way of a continuous system. And there's math around this too. Like the math is actually a difference. You take the same equation and solve it in a continuous fashion or in a discrete fashion, and you'll get different results, in fact.
I like to point to the obvious too, that a vinyl is like having someone play in the room. It's physically playing there. It's happening. It's the moment is there.
It's transported the vibrations through time and space.
Yeah. As well as it's like something physical is happening in the world, in the room that it is in. It's not happening anywhere else. You know, this one singular object, because vinyls of different, you know, you could have the same album, they can print it 7 different times, and guess what, guys? It's slightly different every time. And depending on all your other bits and pieces, you know, the position of the couch in the room, like, this thing is resonating.
And Corey says playing a record is also almost like a ritual. Grab the sides and set the needle down. Well, there is a ritual, right?
Of course.
And that makes it better. I mean, you can. Problem is everything we do is ritual. Like everything we do is liturgy. Like you're not getting around that. Everybody wants to get around that. No, it's not true. Like, it's the individualistic rebellion that's causing the flood of individuals or attempted individuals that's just causing all the problems. Like, just stop rebelling and be fair. People have been told they can. You can do this. It's like, no, you actually, maybe you can't.
Well, you talked about this earlier too, about the ritual of, do I put the cup down first and then go here, or do I do this first, then put that down, and which way's the better, you know, which serves the highest purpose, or which facilitates the beauty of the environment?
Which is more efficient.
Say it a number of different ways. Well,
like, efficiency doesn't solve the problem. It creates a bunch of decisions.
Space.
How efficient? Efficient in relation to what?
Okay,
what are you prioritizing?
I was assuming
efficiency?
Context. Yeah.
Right, because efficiency exists within a telos. You gotta have the telos, or you don't have an efficiency. You can't define efficiency any other way. Ethan, the reason I have a record collection is not primarily for the sound quality, but because it forces participation. I like that. That's really good. I don't have a record collection. Good night, Spatch. Thank you for joining. Yeah, it's interesting, the difference. And it's weird to me that everybody doesn't see this. I don't know. There's 2 different modes of looking at the world, guys. It's everywhere. I know technology. You don't see the difference between digital and analog, between continuous and discrete. It's the same difference.
I could also talk on my niche of being a cinephile or being a movie lover, where, you know, what parts of the film industry were best. And I will speculate with you that when the VHS tape was at its most peak, you had the best storytelling in Western cinema. When the videotape slowly crawled away, or it became this overlapping technology with VHS and digital, you saw a blurring of the lines of storytelling because all the different factors that go into that. You also saw the demarcation, or the shrinking, flattening of the system of producing, because everything became discrete, to Mark's point, you know.
Right. Well, look, I mean, I've talked about that before. So, Ethan, I like the efficiency as defined by telos. Yeah, well, unfortunately, this is the part where the sciencey morons don't like. Everything is defined by telos. By definition, by the way, it's axiomatic. I've talked about this a million times before. Everybody seems to miss it. And I can tell because it's a mic drop moment and nobody goes, ooh, mic drop moment. What makes The Matrix a good movie? I can list off 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things. None of those things that I list is wrong. But none of them is correct or sufficient. Right? And so, necessary but insufficient. Oh, that's, you know, another great Vervaeke concept that Vervaeke uses all the time. So, in fact, I'll take 42 seconds and go into Vervaeke great concept and say necessary but insufficient. Yeah, super important. And when you treat movies as though you can reconstruct them from deconstructed parts, you can't deconstruct anything, by the way, but you think you can because some idiot told you you could, and they lied to you badly, and I feel badly about that. You err. You go, oh, well, I know what made the first movie good, bullet time and the fight scenes. That's what everybody talks about. And then so you're making so many errors there. First of all, people don't know what they like about movies. Like they think they do. And every once in a while they do. But most of the time people have no idea. And so you listen to them and you go, oh, you really like the fight scenes. So in the second movie, you put a lot of fight scenes, right? So you cut every one of those fight scenes in half. They would lose nothing and the movie would gain so much. And I'm not saying I would even do that because I really love the fight scenes for sure. I really enjoy them. But it does take away from the core storytelling of the movie. The fight scenes are too freaking long. And I get it. They were having fun and whatever. And it's still a great film. And you shouldn't watch the first one without watching 2 and 3. And then ignoring that 4 even ever could have existed. Because, yeah. And it's easy to do that with anything. Like, what makes X or Y good? And then you start dissecting it, dividing it up, killing it effectively. And you end up in this world where you've got Critical Drinker. What does Critical Drinker talk about? Now, he's an author, so there's a filter there for sure. He talks about the thing that makes this movie suck is that it's got bad storytelling. And then when he says the thing that makes the movie good is, these components plus a good story. I don't think you're going to hear a Critical Drinker say on his Critical Drinker recommends that a movie is good unless it has a good story. And again, he's an author, so fair. Like that should be his focus, but also that's his focus. So it's sort of important to realize that that's a factor. The fact of the matter is that you can't divide things up and put them back together. You divide things up, but then they're apart. It might be useful and necessary to divide things up. I get that. Nobody's denying that. But also, they're divided up. You've killed them. You've dissected them. And that's important to realize. And we're not realizing that. We're thinking that we can use our internal components, our secret sacred self, right? We can use our ability to analyze and dissect and then create things from there. But maybe we can't. Like maybe somebody told us that and we were lied to. Maybe. And that's the thing. Like, we're not appreciating that potential. That maybe we're just told we can do things that we absolutely cannot do. Maybe we're just cognitively overloaded. Maybe the flood is real and that it really happens and that it's actually happening now with information and that maybe we are living in the age of gnosis. Okay? Like maybe you can't live for long in a world without structure. Maybe. I'm just, throwing that out there.
Maybe you can't live in the world without hierarchy either. There's no greater lesson to learn from the 20th century is that you bring the hierarchy down, you bring everything down.
It'd be interesting. I haven't actually thought about when we started flattening the world. I'm going to do another video with Adam. Maybe I'll do it this coming week here, hopefully. I've already got a title for it. So, yeah. Maybe a Christmas special. Yeah. It's
Do
going
you
to be
want to
called
share this
Echoes of the
title, or
Past.
do you want to keep it
Yeah.
secret? Hidden.
Echoes of the Past. That's the title.
Echoes of the past. Okay.
So we're harkening back to these patterns that recur, basically, right?
Right.
With echoes, and I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know what we're going to put in that title. Right? That's just the title. Think about that. We'll do a video. We'll go into these things, right? And it's amazing how a cursory inspection of history, and you just learn a bunch of stuff. And if you listen to the Convivium talk that Dr. Jim did, which I posted earlier, he talks about, wow, you talk to somebody, in this case me, flatteringly enough, self-servingly enough, and you learn, like, maybe I don't know as much about the French Revolution as I thought. Like, maybe there's a new way to think about these things that wasn't being considered. And there is an aspect of the flattening of history, and it's super important. And there is an aspect of, so let's suppose that you were a complete moron and you were beyond Muppet and you removed religion from history. The problem with that is that now you don't understand the motivation for anything that happened historically at all. And you can't. Like, you can't substitute a political frame. And actually, it's not that those weren't factors and those things didn't happen, but you can't actually understand what happened. Right? Because you can put it in a political frame or an economic frame, right? Or maybe some other frame, whatever, but you're never going to understand what happened. Right? So you can cast something like Gamergate in the frame of a bunch of angry testosterone toxic males, which is just hysterical, playing video games. Really? Right. Picking on some innocent woman. You could do that. But, is that helpful? Corey, then going through Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which is misnamed, it should be called Awakening to the Meaning Crisis, is Vervaeke's massive recommended book list an example of this Gnosticism? It's an example of the age of Gnosis. I want to be careful with the term Gnosticism because I'm not a Gnosticism expert. I suspect the age of Gnosis is a form of Gnosticism where you're preferring knowledge as the highest value. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. Ethan, I think the flattening began when the devotion to Mary stopped. Whew, dude, freaking nuclear weapon. Ethan brings a nuclear weapon to the party. I truly think people would have thought twice before doing what they did if they knew they were removing God from his throne. So I'm assuming that you're putting that at French Revolution and then the culmination of that at World War I, which maybe there was only one World War, different. Don't get me started. The similarities between World War I and World War II are so numerous, it's hard to make the argument that they're actually separate wars. It looks like a continuation with a break in between to me. Same country, same telos, same. It's the Third Reich. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I think that might not be a bad way to look at. Right. But that leads me down a different rabbit hole of who's removing the feminine and when did they do this? Ethan. Oh no, he's going right for the jugular. It's going to sound cliche, but the Protestant Reformation. You mean the Protestant catastrophe? Because I'm still there. Corey, yeah, Robespierre, the new god of reason. Yeah, well, and the statute to the god of reason and stuff, right? Father Eric, this isn't peace. This is a 20-year armistice. Yes, that is. Yeah, I like that. I don't know why I haven't thought of that before, but yes, really.
I've been talking
too.
I've been talking with my South African friend Duncan a little bit about the nominalists and when that crept in, and that's his sort of take. That's when
That's a Vervaeke take too, nominalism, and I'm not a fan. Like when you read what the nominalists believe, you go, no one ever believed that. That's dumb. Like it's You cannot act in the world if you're anomalous. Because action isn't possible. And so it's like, well, now what? And that's where I'm like, nah, bro. You know, and you've got to look at, you have to look at, freaking, you know what Adam and I should do too. I didn't even think of this. We should do the Russian Revolution, right? Because this is a continuation. Because you've got the English Revolution, the French Revolution, the American so-called Revolution, right? Was in between
People
the two.
are not ready for that, Mark. That's
But then you've got the Russian Revolution, which is the same damn thing, right? It's another misunderstanding of how this shit works. Pardon my French, but yeah, it's like, guys, really, how did you make that mistake? Even? And to be fair, ironically, it's the miracle of America that causes everything to happen. And the irony is that America doesn't happen without the English Revolution. If they don't behead the king, nothing. The colonies don't revolt. Like, I know, it's so weird. It's like, once you understand all that, how the revolutions are tied together, and the fact that we've got this one outlier that causes everything else afterwards, and causes a lot of hope and a lot of power behind it, you really don't understand how freaking weird the world is. Like, well, that's just weird, dude. Like, I don't care if you're like a Christian or if you've got some good political, but like, that's still weird. It's weird.
It's almost like globalism is a phenomena that's far more suspect than we were willing to believe. It goes back, yeah.
Well, there's an article from a guy who said 1915 was the year that globalism died as the result of the lead up to World War One or the start of World War One. He was basically, the point he was making is that I think he was in the middle of Africa. He's, writing contemporary, right? Mm-hmm. He's in the middle of Africa, and he's able to order anything off a catalog from the streets of London.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? And we're like, we don't understand. Yeah. Because we had supply line disruptions after World War II. So, like, our parents and our parents' parents didn't experience this either. So it's like so far back, and yet we had globalism. Ethan, even pagans before Christianity had Gaia. Protestants have nothing. Well, Protestants are rebelling against hierarchy. Dude, that PVK live stream today, I was just so like, how are you guys there and you don't see it? You're standing in front of the answer to the thing. You're standing in, like, it's, how do you not see this? And it's eyes, it's no eyes to see. I'm just like, I don't, you're just, and it's like four different things. You're describing four different things. The answer is obvious by the stuff you've already consented to. You've already said this is happening. Fair. If that's happening, though, the obvious conclusion is that it's the right thing to happen, which means you're on the wrong side. It's like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm sitting there going, hint in the comment. Eventually, I'm doing it in caps. I was like, so like, you gotta be kidding me. How are you talking about this and not seeing the connection here? Oh, it's so weird. The world is weird.
Stranger than we know. Stranger than we.
All these Catholics keep popping up in institutions and structures and hierarchies. Well, that's the thing they know the best. What do you think? You're going to run it? You're a Protestant. You wouldn't know a hierarchy if it bit you. You just rebel against anything you think might be a hierarchy before anything's actually been built. Oh, my goodness. Anyway. Hello. I don't know if I buy the main rationale for the papacy. I didn't know what the main rationale for the papacy was until I saw Candace Owens with, I forget who, and her husband. And her husband went over papal infallibility, and it was amazing. And yes, I would say Father Eric is correct. It doesn't matter. understanding is overrated. See the talk from Convivium that Father Eric gave to start to understand why understanding is overrated and you don't need it and you should throw it out. And this is all age of gnosis. Like, we think we have to know to act. No, you don't. In fact, you can't know and act. It's one or the other. If you know things, you're going to get lazy and not act anyway, because the outcome's certain because it's in your head. People don't realize that, right? Like, you're just going to build utopia in your mind and then be upset, angry, and resentful at everything when it's not that way. And then you'll run out in the street and scream at the sky. Describing real events here, buddy, in case anybody was unclear on that. Right. Understanding is completely underrated. There's a bunch of stuff you should just do because 2,000 or plus years of history has proven that it is the correct way. Not that it's going to work out well for you all the time necessarily, but on average, it's going to be better for everybody. And doesn't that make you the hero? Peterson talks about this. We're in the Peterson sphere, folks. Peterson talks about this. Plumbers saved more lives than doctors. Yup. Who's the hero now?
Well, he also references that, aircon, again, one of the biggest miracles of the 20th century.
Yeah. Yeah, and that the secret sacred self understands or would understand. It's like, why? And that's the thing. Like, when you introduce understanding into the world, the penalty, the trade-off, the cost is miracle. Do you want to live in a disenchanted world with no miracle? Really? I don't think you do. Somehow, novelty is gone at that point, by the way. And then people are like, we need the novelty back. I know, let's drop some acid. What? What are you doing,
Yeah.
you lunatic? I know, if you don't create the problem, then you don't have to fix it with drugs. Ethan, you can't know and act. It's one or the other. Thank you. Yes.
Well, another would be like, oh, I don't want to go to this religious institution. I'll just invent one in the form of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Invent my own religion. My own liturgy. Oh, wait a minute. Is this true? A lion is the symbol for Saint Mark. Oh,
How do you not know this? How do you not? Oh, gosh.
How would I know any of that?
Narnia, bro.
I know of no fox saints. Look, Jacob Federaci on that live stream said clearly, and I don't know if he's correct, there's no positive fox symbolism in the Bible. None. It's all negative. And I was just sitting there like, this is a hint, guys. This is a hint. You guys are praising this fox-like thing that the Protestants do. And the Bible kind of says, don't do that, dude. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, why don't you see this? Jesse, have you ever considered maybe we're the baddies? It's like, well, the difference is I actually consider that all the time. I don't think they do. I don't think they ever ask the question. Maybe we're the guards that Peterson talks about in the camp. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's why you're confused. Because you're on the wrong side and you haven't figured it out yet. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. Freaking Bazzini did it in the freaking live stream again. I'm like, yeah, it's weird. These Protestants go to school and they learn all these bad things about the Catholics, almost all of which are lies or at least wicked exaggerations. Catholics don't do that. And then he goes, yeah, but there's that on both sides. I'm like, no, explicitly there is not. That's why you can't point to it. Like, don't tell. I'm giving you stories from actual people and actual events that occurred. And you're saying, well, yeah, but it's kind of on the both sides. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's why you don't have any examples. You have zero examples because it doesn't exist on the other side. The Catholics do not sit there and denigrate the Protestants. Sometimes I wish they would. But, like torches is good. I like torches.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do
Father
like
Eric,
that.
every
Yeah,
Catholic
that's
liturgy begins, I screwed up. I like it. Orthodox too, I'm sure. I don't know, man. I go to the Orthodox Church, and basically all it is they say Theotokos a bunch of times, wisdom a couple of times, and then a bunch of other words that aren't important. And like it's stand up, sit down, bow, and then you're out of there. I don't know what's going on. It's crazy. Oh, and there's incense too. It's nuts.
I like the incense part. I think that's cool. That's just
It,
they
it's
probably do have
like
the better artwork. If I was just purely being objective, I think the artwork the Orthodox have is
oh, the artwork's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's just distracting. It's awesome, and you're pulled towards it too. It's like
Yeah.
great. It's great, and I can understand why it's scary for people because man, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's icons everywhere. It's like wow, it's too many icons. What am I gonna do? Father Eric, when we covered the Reformation in school, we learned about how Martin Luther did have some good criticisms in addition to being a heretic. Yeah, see, they give credit where credit is due. I don't know why, but it's nice of them, I guess.
The most virtuous thing to do.
Freaking symmetry, equality doctrine. Yeah, but you guys do it too. That doesn't make it right. What are you for? Like, what is wrong? Why are you making arguments of 4-year-olds? I don't understand. Like, if you are making the same argument your 4-year-old child has made to you, then you are wrong. Like, I don't know what else to tell you about how the world works. Hint, you're the baddie. Wow. It just blew me away. I was like, really? It's bad behavior on both sides, guys. Piss off. Probably not. That was so when I got in trouble for fighting in school, almost every time we get sent to the principal's office or whatever, detention would be assigned to 2 people and only one person would be required to go to detention, and that person was never me. Okay, so you can equality all you want, but everybody knew I wasn't starting any fights. Sorry, didn't happen. Now, did they keep up appearances? Absolutely. Absolutely they were. Did it work? Sometimes. Often, kids knew who was in detention and who wasn't. They'd be like, why didn't you get detention? I was there in the room when you were given detention. Yeah, well, I got a get out of detention free card because everybody knows you're the baddie. I don't know what to tell you. Father, I can't. You're the baddie, right? Hint, hint, hint. Ethan, I assume it was something like, quote, Luther had some good criticisms, but they weren't unique to him, and they would have inevitably been addressed anyways, because truth is truth. Lol. Ouch, dude, that's harsh. I support this message, by the way. Still a no on Protestant catastrophe. And the misunderstanding of Luther, like had the Protestants that followed him actually said, oh, Luther had some good points. And Luther actually ended up repenting on a couple of his big issues before he died. And maybe his followers should have like heeded that instead of going with their murderous ways. I love too how whenever Protestants bring this stuff up, I go, Protestants have killed more Protestants than Catholics have. Dead silence, and then it's like topic change. I'm like, really? We're not elephant in the room much. I talked about the elephant in the room in the monologue earlier. Yeah, it just always cracks me up. I'm like, you guys got some things there you might want to address. The 400-pound gorillas. There seem to be several of them. But it's all secret, sacred cell. And where do you think that comes from? It's Catholic conspiracy. It's the crypto-conservative Catholic. It's like, no, dude, it's all Protestantism. It's all Protestant catastrophe detritus. The real question is, have you considered you're a Muppet?
where I would input it in, because I'm not well researched on this in order to speak on it, and I'm very hesitant to, because it's not my place, because I'm not in that world at the moment. Is that you do have the instance of one of the first big civil wars in history happening there, and that's often forgotten or pushed aside. Is that it's a battle between two similar groups in some sense. It's an internal civil war, and that has an echoes of the past, or that echoes out into the future. If you want to see the decline of the West, it's right there in that aspect of the civil war between Christians. That sense of mistrust in collective cohesion. That's that's what ends whole civilizations there. You see that in Rome too, when there's the Rome civil wars. So these things aren't that unique. However, again, there is a narrativization on these on these key issues that.
Well, if you want echoes
Complex.
and like great man theory stuff, there's Caesar, right? And then there's render unto Caesar, which creates all kinds of interesting side effects that we're still echoing with, right? And then, you kind of move further up, and there are these figures that cause these splits, right? They are the genesis of something that happens generations later. And I'm still struggling with the render unto Caesar, right, which creates the merchant class effectively.
Essentially, yeah.
And we're still sort of suffering from that in some way, right? And equality doctrine is born of that, right, or at least enabled by it. And it's on and on and on. And once that started, because the merchant class eventually morphs into corporatism. And the first instance of a corporation controlling a government really is the English Revolution and the beheading of the king, because Parliament's basically being heavily influenced, if not outright controlled, by the East India Company. Nobody talks about that. It just kind of slips everybody's mind. Right. And what's the tea in the harbor? The tea in the harbor is because of the East India Company. It's not a secret. Like, you can just read the contemporary sources.
There's actually a decent TV series about it too. It does have some pretty sus aspects to it, but again, those sus aspects are mostly historically accurate. It's called Taboo with Tom Hardy. If you can if you're highly religious, you kind of just pinch your nose and watch it for the narrativization of the time. And do what thou will with your own morality there. But it is, I think, the more I've studied into that zone, you're like, okay, there really was parlors where certain individuals did do certain things or behaved in a certain way. And that's,
I talked about cooperation and corporations. So in the beginning, there was one body to be within, to cooperate with, right? And so you look at something like ancient Egypt, and the god and the government are effectively the same. And then you move forward to like Greece and Rome, and now there's two things. There's the government, right? The polis becomes a thing, and then there's still the religious. And there's some cooperation in each, but there's competition between them, right? And then Christianity comes along and opens this third door, render unto Caesar, right? And now all of a sudden, there's this corporate thing that happens as a result of the merchant class, as a result of render unto Caesar. So now there's three bodies you can cooperate in. right? There's an economic body, which is a corporation. There's a religious body, which is Christianity or not, right? And then there's the government. There's the politics. So you get the political, economic, and religious frames right there, and that's where we are, right? We're at the culmination of that battle. And you get something like socialism, which plays the shell game of telling you, well, no one needs to be in charge of this stuff. No one needs to own it, right? It'll just survive on its own because objective material reality. And Karl Marx is an objective material realist. And also equality, like the workers are the same as the management, is the same as the ownership. Really? Like, have you worked anywhere ever? Have you worked for bad managers and good managers? Right? Have you realized? Have you worked in a union shop? I worked in a union shop. It was terrible for me. Terrible, because I'm a 10x. So like you put me in an environment and I just excel. It's competence isn't even an issue. It's how much more competence do I have than the other people around me, and it's usually not good for them. And they hated me. They were like, "You need to slow down." I was like, what? No, that's not an option. That doesn't ever happen. Like, that's not a thing the universe allows. You'll have more luck bending the laws of physics. I'm not slowing down. That's not happening. That's how I operate. And then, yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess.
Yeah, we've also, again, maybe going back to when I first joined this chat, which is that good principles or good leadership is a tradition, and we've raised a whole generation or two or three or four, just where do you want to draw the line, where following the rules or maintaining the principles, participating in the system is seen as a net negative, rather than,
right,
well, you're in this culture, in this place,
right,
you know, it's not good for you to participate in a way that's counterproductive, let's just say it that way, to what this place is and what it values. I actually have a clip from a certain person on Twitter saying I went to this European country and that's, constantly being told that that's not the way we do things here. Like, if you don't like it, leave.
Right.
And it was an American, essentially. But yeah.
Which country?
I'll let you figure that out by the emphasis on rules. And then leave it there. Okay. Yeah.
That's it, done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tells me everything I need to know. Yeah. Well, and I think, James Lindsay makes a lot of hay about the tradition of Gnosticism and where it comes from, and makes this historical thread, which is ironic because he denies that the historical thread they claim exists, but then he makes one, which whatever. I love James Lindsay, so no fault. No harm, no foul from my perspective. But
okay, all right.
But,
I still have beef with him.
But I've got lots.
You don't take on Peugeot. You don't take on someone who's actually doing things in the world and generating good in the world. So
I know.
Yeah.
Different problem.
Yeah.
But when you flatten the world, right? Of course, Marxism seems okay. Like, yeah, he did that. He said all workers are the same. All workers, no matter what their task, are the same. It's like, first of all people who move boxes for UPS aren't the same. Like, I was excellent at it. So that's different, right? Second of all, a good manager is still good. And a same group of people under a better manager is still better. And that is a value that cannot be replaced by taking a team member and making them a manager. And like, I get that Karl Marx is actually moronic. And if you read him stuff and you don't see that he's moronic, I suggest you either have a fantasy projection of what you're reading or you have low reading comprehension. And you're really not understanding what he's saying because you think he's being smart, when in fact, it's kind of obvious from the stuff. And I haven't read all his stuff or anything, like, because you read 3 sentences and it's like, really, dude? Like, you're 4 years old. Like, you need to stop. Somebody should have taken the pen out of your hand. That's what should have happened. You should not have been allowed to write. And there's lots of people like that. I would argue Foucault and Derrida are probably also the same situation. The stuff they're saying is retarded. So, Michelle, thank you, Michelle. It's good to see you, sir. Can a leader, even when perceived symbolically or spiritually, be deemed truly effective without recognizing the subtle yet profound influence of the divine feminine that can be witnessed? I like this, but it was well crafted. Like, when did you get this good at crafting questions? Very well done. I would push back on the witnessed. I don't think you're witnessing the influence. I think, again, what the divine feminine is doing when properly divine is creating a space. And so what you're doing as a leader is you are protecting that space. And it's that space that gives you the grounding to continue towards the telos. And maybe the divine feminine also points at the telos. Like that's also possible, right? It's possible that this diagram is correct. And because we worked on it for like 2 years, actually, or something stupid. Because we're just we're so Muppets. It takes us this long to do a simple thing. Everything's simple when it's done. It's hard before it's done.
Oh yeah.
Asymmetry. What do you?
Where else? Maybe not to deconstruct it, but just to find the different layers within the question. In order to perceive something as subtle, you do have to already pre-exist the recognizing. So your participation, your filter of the you just see the subtlety in things. So that's what a good leader does. Oh, that's one thing that's within that. The influence of you're kind of begging the question by saying that men the influence does come from the perception, symbolic or spirituality too. So therefore those two things together, the effectiveness is actually not in question. What's in question is the leadership. Is the quality of the leadership.
Well, and see, maybe that's really what Michelle's getting at, and really the problem is that we don't know good leaders from bad leaders because we don't have a proper engagement with embodiment of the divine feminine. And without that, to Michelle's point, like, how can we deem him effective? How can we deem a leader effective without the pointing? And look, we can get into, what if you have a woman lead? That's usually a disaster, right? Like, need I go into Carly Fiorina? I mean, flat pack catastrophe. People hold these people up and they're disasters. Hillary Clinton is a disaster. Like, wow. Like, talk about raw destruction. What the heck? Like, does it have to be that way? Maybe not, but you're opening the door. And that every time we've opened that door, yikes. And it's not like historically we didn't have female leaders. I dare you to point to a time in history where that actually happened.
Truly effective too is it's more of a masculine emphasis. How do I do this without context, contrast, distinction? In order to evaluate a leader, you kind of need those three things. You need to see moments of distinction. You need to contrast that leader with other good examples of leaders that you've had, or other people have pointed to say, yes, that was a good saint, that was a good leader. This is a good example of behavior. Yeah, and or lack. Yes, that's yeah. And what did I say? Distinction, context. Oh, context is key. Not in every moment. Effectiveness might not just be there. Like, sustainability actually might be a better outcome then completely taking ground. You know, like I think I said this to Bruce before. Sometimes the justified retreat, and then, you know, there'll be losses from that retreat, but a good leader will be able to find the resolve in order to rebuild from that sacrifice or trade-off. Yeah, it's a great question though. There's these different. So.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a nice subtlety. I mean, that might be why we're having a problem with leaders. And, you know, who's voting for these clowns? Who's allowing them to be like, man, the dust up over Harvard University is just hysterical. I can tell there's a bunch of people at Clubhouse going, oh, now we understand what Mark was saying 2 years ago. Yeah, I bet the hell you do now. Because, man, I just trash Harvard every chance I get. Because
you do realize hip hop culture, which is the predominant mindset of a lot of young people in America, they have this hip hop culture. It's based upon thievery. And what is she accused of? Multiple instances of plagiarism. Guys, it's just it's just thievery at an intellectual level.
Well, we're holding that up. Like, this
it's not doing
more...
due diligence as well. You could just cite the person, and then you wouldn't be plagiarizing.
Well, and it's raising up the lowest again. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's the sin of Harvard. Like, and there's multiple papers written about this. Like, man, you send all these people to Harvard on a free ticket or whatever, but they didn't have the grades to get in. And then what happens is they graduate, but they know inside they're insufficient. And then they act that out. And they get angry and resentful. You might have had a president in the US like that too. Just saying. And that's the problem. And people don't account for that. But you have to take it, and then you have to be able to see, is this a good leader or a bad leader? Does a good leader set a line in the sand and then not enforce it? I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, right? How many times do you allow someone to change their word on a certain topic? That's what I would say about that person as well. There was a few times where I'm for this, I'm for this, I'm for this. Actually, maybe this. Actually, no, maybe definitely that. Like, how many times do you accommodate that?
And what's the simple explanation? Because sometimes the simple explanation is the reason why the worst possible outcome happened is because that person wanted the worst possible outcome. And people don't want to hear that because that would mean he's pure evil. Okay, dude, I agree. Like, I'm glad we're on the same page. Nobody likes that answer. And that was by the way, that was the driving force for the monologue. Like, I am still dealing with this. I am still dealing with this. No, the simple explanation is that this person is a bad person who's knowingly, maliciously doing bad things. And that we see this over and over again. The simplest explanation for the president of Harvard is that she's a bad person doing bad things. The reason why there is a history of her doing bad things is because she is a bad person. It's not that hard. I know that's difficult to believe because she's a person, you're a person. Oh my goodness, what does that say about me? Always have to ask yourself the question, am I the baddie? Right? You have to. And you have to ask that with others so they can give you feedback. And if their feedback isn't immediately no, right? Or if their feedback is why, of course not, that's a problem. That's a lie. Immediately, right? Then you got to start asking yourself some questions, right? And that's hard.
Oh yeah, I had this. I was listening to someone else while I was trying to get up to do my morning stuff this morning, and had a whole bunch to do stuff before the heat wave kicked in. It's just after like 11:30 here on a heat wave in Sydney, you just don't do anything. It's just stay indoors, have a fan on you, put some aircon, just conserve your energy, like save it for the evening. Yeah, the Mediterranean midday sleep is there for a reason, guys. It's a smart strategy. Nevertheless, you know, what I got was that it's very hard to tell the truth to someone in a way that they're ready to receive. They already have done some reframing, some rework in order to take on an aspect of the truth, because the truth can be rough, it can be tough, it can be challenging by its very nature, because we like to have the prestige of our own knowledge in our own head. We like to think that we have it all together, or we have our certainty, because because that helps our agency. If we know what we're doing and we think we're doing it well, then we feel like we can accomplish things in the world, and we're potentially fulfilling this idea of freedom. However, once you inspect yourself, or you do any contemplative practice, you realize that you're uncertain on many things, and that you're disembodied on many aspects.
Freedom and top-down power from above, and power as control, and power as control through force or threat of force. And it, man, when you start listening to people and you realize, oh, you used power to mean control through force or threat of force, boy, you're going to see that everywhere. You'd be like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's how they're using the word power. And it's like, that's kind of a big deal. And Father Eric, upside down world. Yeah, we're an upside down world. We're in the world where evil's right in front of you and you're not. You're just not ready to see it. Eyes to see is a big problem. There's one big problem right now. It's eyes to see. And I think, right. Well, I think that, you know, that sort of ties it right back to the beginning of my monologue, and sort of the driving force of the things I was tying together, that I was seeing, that, you know, they're not all tied together, right? Or they're not all obviously as tied together as a normal monologue would be. That's why it's a Muppets ARRGH US. But they are tied together. And if you can see that, that's the poetic. The word poetic, by the way, keeps coming up more and more. Another thing I forgot to mention that in the monologue. It's another one of the words that we use that just seems to be popping up. But yeah, I think that's sort of important. Like, we're not seeing what's in front of us, including sometimes we're the baddies, you know, and somebody's got to be wrong. And maybe it's not. Maybe there's no such thing as crypto Catholicism or whatever nonsense frame you're using to understand the world. And maybe it's just an obvious side effect of something that's so obvious that you're just missing it because you don't want to admit the ugly truth about the side that you're on, or the thing that you're stuck in, or the limitations of your way of looking at the world. And with that, let's wrap up the stream. What do you think, Jesse? Closing words.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks everyone for participating this year from my side of things. It's this small little circle, or this circle's maybe the wrong word. This Peterson sphere, this time slot of receiving wisdom, you know, it has multiple effects on the world. Never discount the organized minority that that isn't embodying it. So,
I like that. Yeah, somebody commented to me today that they were seeing something that I've been saying for years, all over the place in unexpected places. I'm like, yeah, I know. there's a tell us, the spirit's moving, and you know, to some extent, we're participating in that movement. Hopefully for the good, and we're always inspecting that. And look, if you want to see another live stream before the end of the year, because I think I'll be home, not next Friday after, right? Leave me a comment. If I have people who actually want it, maybe I'll be more likely to do one. It would be more of a year wrap-up thing. I don't think I'd have a topic by that time, because I'll be traveling. It'll be Christmas, you know, all that nonsense. But either way, leave a comment, leave likes, leave suggestions for future live streams, whatever you want to see. we're kind of to some extent here for you to help you sense make and understand the world. And I don't know what people aren't seeing. I was just blown away by that live stream today with BBK. I was like, really? This is what you're confused about? How can you possibly be confused about this with what you admit to? It's amazing. And, look, I'll try to get more videos out. I'm really struggling with that. But in the meantime, have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy your holidays. Be with your family. Don't try to be an individual. Right? Try to cooperate. Find a body that you can cooperate with. And have a lovely end of the year if I don't see you for another Friday. And then we'll pick it up next year and we'll see where it goes. And if you get suggestions, put them down below.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Goodbye.